Where's the owl? I haven't heard anything yet. Howard, I haven't forgotten you, by the way. I haven't forgotten you. I want to come out and talk to you about this. Yeah. Okay, everyone, welcome to the planning board meeting for December 8th. Obviously, we have a hybrid meeting tonight, so attendees, Dave is on Zoom, and John is on Zoom, and Joe is on Zoom, right?
So we should do a roll call.
Yeah, we're going to be doing roll call votes tonight. So I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'll be acting chair tonight. And so I want to do a roll call vote. Dave, are you out there?
Aye. Present. Here.
On.
Here.
Joe?
Here.
Hillary?
Here.
And Nat Lowell's here. Thank you very much. Okay.
What about us alternates?
Oh, alternates. We got Abby D. Molina,
I'm here.
Steve Welch,
Here.
and Howard Matz is here right next to me. Thank you very much. Okay. So before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone, please wait to be recognized before speaking. All comments should be directed to the chair. Please state your name and address for the record. We ask that everyone remain respectful and allow each other to speak. So with that, I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda.
So
we
moved,
want
Mr.
to do
Chair.
some changes- You want to do some changes first? Do we have anything? What about the two things that were, okay, they're not posted stuff, or?
One thing was posted, and it was impossible to have 48 hours notice, so that's the first business item on the agenda. The other thing was an internal email that we did not post it, did not post the update.
Okay, so Milestone Crossing is
Nope.
off
Yep.
tonight? Okay. All right, is there any public comment for items not on the agenda? Campbell?
I was just wondering if you could remind me of the time and date and everything for the upcoming breakfast meeting,
Oh,
right?
yep,
Just, thank you.
I think we can do that as an announcement. It's at the
Yep.
Nantucket Inn. Registration opens at 8:30. There will be some coffee, that kind of thing, and then it starts at 9, and it's scheduled from 9 until 11 to talk about the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission enabling legislation updates.
okay. Before we start, does anyone have any recusals, anything they want to pull, separate, et cetera? I have one. Joe, do you have anything?
No.
Okay. All right, Joe, Dave will be chairing 16 Bayberry.
Should we
Okay.
take a motion to approve the minutes?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get through that.
Okay.
So do you want to take them one at a time, Hillary?
No, I did want to make a comment about 97 Old South Road if you're collecting those sorts of comments
I
right now.
just want to make sure that everyone knows who's, not going to be sitting and that kind of
Oh,
thing.
got it. Okay.
Okay, so minutes to September 8th and November 13th, any errors or omissions?
Make a motion to approve?
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Joe,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Hillary,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay. Okay, second dwellings, anyone want to pull any of these or just,
I just wanted to add a finding for 97 Old South Road.
okay? What?
Just that, since it does have another driveway access as part of the second dwelling, that the finding is that it's not contrary to sound traffic and safety considerations.
You want that
in the motion.
in the motion? Okay. Okay, so we'll take that separately then. So we'll go to 11 South Shore first. Anyone want to make a motion on 11 South Shore?
I'd make a motion to approve the second dwelling.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Dave, seconded by Joe. Dave,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Hillary,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Okay, so go ahead on your
Oh, just
comment on 97.
a motion to approve, but just to keep track of when there is a second driveway being added. Am I correct that a second driveway? Yeah, so we should be making a finding that the second driveway is not, I guess that it's,
When you say that, you mean curb cut to Old South?
But
Is
this,
that what's going on?
this isn't a second driveway. It's an internal.
I was gonna say, we would have already talked about
okay,
It's only when it's a second cut.
okay, so we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Set with that one.
Okay.
good.
All right, so with that
Motion to
clarification.
approve,
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Dave,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Hillary,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Okay, excellent, thank you. Okay, we'll go to Thomas Holt.
Excuse me,
Go-
sorry, we skipped right over Tacoma Green.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Is that, the staff report doesn't show that on there. I'm sorry about that.
It's
Okay, go ahead.
So this is the item that wasn't anticipated within 40 hours. It
Yeah.
just came to our attention Friday morning. There's a condition in the original decision that contemplates a lottery to be approved by DHCD, now EOHLC, for the market rate units. That's actually not a standard practice or protocol to have a lottery for market rate units. So it's come up kind of in this checklist of closing items to be discussed. So there
To be
was a.
clear, this was 2017.
Yes,
this
so
happened.
I think the intent was the board at that time wanted to make sure the market rate units were rented in a manner that complied with any EOHLC requirements and regulations, which they certainly do. So we're asking for a motion. We can put that up on the screen that town council has prepared.
Yeah. Did everybody read this? This is good, I think. Covers it.
Do you have that motion in the packet, or was that just in an email, Billy?
I read it somewhere, but now I can't find it.
No, it was in the stuff we got recently.
I know I sent a flurry of emails on Friday and on Sunday, and
Yeah.
they start to all blend together.
So it's in red on the screen right now.
So on the screen is what we would respectfully request your motion be to address this very technical change.
Sorry, I gotta share that so they can see it on.
Good job, William.
If there's no discussion, I would make that motion.
I mean, this is housekeeping.
Yes,
isn't it?
Second.
With all the letters, okay.
yes.
All right. So motion made by Dave, second, because it's really just the name, change in the name of the entity, right?
No, it's taking
No,
away the
no.
lottery because we don't have to. have
Right,
it.
but I mean, it's partly due to the entity as well. So motion made by Dave, seconded by Joe. Dave,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Hillary,
Aye.
the chair votes aye. Sorry about that, skipping.
That's okay.
Megan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, so, done this in a while. Okay, so we have 2 second dwellings. I mean, no, wait a minute, we're on to 126 Main. And the A&R, so we have, does anyone have any questions about either of the A&Rs?
No, but Nat, you should read them out, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if Thomas C. Holt,
No.
no, that's, that's a,
126
never
Main
mind.
and Badlands Investment.
Okay, yeah, so we have 126 Main Street, nominee trust Ryan Kelly, trustee, And we have Badlands Investments, Algird and Calgird, and yeah, the other ones are for the real lots. Sorry about that. Does anyone have any questions on these? To pull out or anything? Okay. So I'll accept the motion of endorsement.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair. Second.
Okay, motion made by Joe, seconded by John. John,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Hillary,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Thank you. Acting chair. I don't want to take anything away from Dave. Okay. New word, acting. That was last year, wasn't it, Joe?
That was it.
Okay, so the previous plans for 12 Knobsco Way subdivision,
Yep,
Wait,
so
now we got to circle back.
okay,
You're right. Keep on going. I apologize.
So for 12 Knobsco Way, the applicant had put up a performance surety bond to cover the cost of the final paving along the cul-de-sac. They have completed that paving. It is pending inspection from Pesci Engineering. Just, he had a bit of a hectic schedule the past couple of weeks. So our recommendation would be to authorize the release subject to a favorable inspection from our consulting engineer.
is Ed still doing all this?
He
Haven't seen
sure
him in a
is.
while. Okay. All right, this isn't on the agenda as far as the Laserfish agenda here, so I'm sorry about that, skipping it by accident. Does anyone have any questions about this, or you just want to make, anyone want to make that motion? Is
Make a motion to approve?
there a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, Hillary,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay. Okay, the public hearings, 3 Yawkey Way is a request for withdrawal. Anyone want to make a motion? Withdraw without
Can we do-
prejudice?
Can we do both of those withdrawals?
We could do both at the same time. You want to do 25 Fairgrounds and 3B Yawkey Way? Okay, Dave.
I'd make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second, Mr. Acting Chair.
Okay, all those in favor, Dave,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
John,
Aye, Mr. Acting Chair.
Hillary,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, and then we have 2 continuances.
3, Nat.
3. Wait a minute. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. So we have Longfin LLC, 1 Barnyard Valley Road. We have Maryland Lane Homeowners Association, and we have Cliffside Beach, 46 Jefferson Ave, continue. Anyone want to make a motion for all 3?
Motion to accept the continuances, Mr. Acting Chair.
Okay, is there a second?
Second, acting chair.
All right. All those in favor, Joe,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Hillary,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye.
And Nat, did we state continue to January 12th? Make sure we got that in there.
Say that again, Dave?
Make sure we got the date that it's continued to in the motion.
Everything says the third, one's on
Well,
the,
yeah.
okay.
So
Oh,
they're
you're
all
talking
being
about staff.
continued to our next meeting, January 12th. So when we continue a public hearing, it has to be to a date certain.
Okay.
Yes.
Even though there's a deadline, we got to do it for when the next meeting is. Okay.
Yep. So the action deadline staff handles kind of internally. We'll get proper extensions before the next meeting. So
Okay.
we're just going to be continuing those
All
3
right.
items to January 12th.
Okay. I'll be recusing from this next one, and Dave is going to chime in from his van or wherever he is. Okay? I don't think he's in his van right now.
No, I'm not, Nat. But
Okay.
maybe next meeting I will be.
Okay, that's right. Dead or winter, you're in your van. Okay, thank you.
Right. Great. Bear with me doing this remote, folks. So this is L&B Rider, 16 Bayberry Lane, represented by Arthur Reed.
Mr. Chair, he's moving over right now.
All right, great. Welcome, Arthur. Welcome, Arthur.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
I can.
Yep.
Okay, good. I've been having some trouble with that for some reason from my computer recently. Just wanted to make sure you could. I was absent, so I was out of the country, as a matter of fact, in October when this matter was originally on the agenda, and I'm now back and presenting it. And this is an application for a rear lot subdivision on the property at 16 Bayberry Lane. Approval required plan has already been approved. And this is basically a typical situation of a rear lot subdivision where the property, the ability of the property to be subdivided has been established through the previous approval required application. We now are asking for the special permit for the rear lot subdivision with the A&R plan as shown here to be endorsed and recorded after the special permit has been issued for the rear lot subdivision. It complies in all respects with the requirements for a rear lot subdivision as set forth in the bylaw. My client is, I believe, present in the audience along with some other people, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. But basically, that's what we're proposing here. We agree with all of the proposed findings and recommendations contained by the inserted by the staff and contained in the staff report.
Great. Thank you, Arthur. Board members, questions, concerns? None?
No.
No.
All right.
Motion to close public comment?
Is there anybody in the public I can't see from here that would like to speak to this application?
I don't see any hands.
Okay.
There's no one physically at the microphones either.
And no hands up online. I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public comment. Second. Anyone?
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, motion made by Joe, seconded by John. Joe,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Hillary,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. Okay,
There is a raised hand from Paul Santos. Oh, wait, it went down again.
all right.
Has someone been activated? Was an alternate activated on this? I feel like maybe Howard was, but I'm not entirely certain.
If we did, we activated Howard. Because he was the only one in the room. Isn't that correct, Howard? Yes.
That's correct.
Okay, so Howard, how was that? How would you vote on closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Perfect. Sorry about that. Okay. As for the merits,
Move
Um,
approval with the findings and conditions as noted in the staff report.
And I'll second Hillary's motion.
great. So motion made by Hillary, second by Howard. Hillary,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. So that's unanimous. And now on back to the
A&R.
A&R. I'd accept the motion on the A&R.
Motion to endorse.
Second.
Motion made by Joe, seconded by John. Joe,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
Hillary,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. That's unanimous. Thank you,
Thank you
Arthur.
very much.
Thank you, Rob.
Welcome back, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Dave, very much. Next up on the agenda is Edward S. Bent and Rebecca Bent. And, oh no, is that, no, that's
Yep,
right.
that's right.
2 and 4 South Valley Road and 27 Shimmer Pond Road. That large piece on the left there. Okay. All right. One second. Get this up on my screen. Okay, Paul Santos is representing. Paul, are you here?
I am here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Floor is
Paul
yours.
Santos, on behalf of the property owner and applicant, the trustees of Bent Shimonomini Trust. Arthur Reed, who represents the trust, is also on the call in case any questions that I might not be able to handle need to be addressed. This is an application, a special permit for a second curb cut or driveway on a property that is known as 2 and 4 South Valley Road and 27 Shimo Pond Road. Correctly so, the assessor's maps for this property depict this as 3 parcels. As this was subdivided through the A&R process back in 2008. However, in July of this year, on behalf of the applicant, Arthur filed with the Registry of Deeds a declaration of restriction to merge the lots for building and zoning purposes. So the plan that you see before you in the background shows the 3 lots that the assessors show. However, it does reference the merger, and we're here before you looking at a piece of property for all intents purposes is 1 parcel of land containing 2 dwellings. The property as it exists has 1 driveway access presently. We are seeking to place another or a second driveway access. So each of the structures has their own independent driveway. Property is located in the Lug 1 zoning district. The combined area of the former 3 lots is 160,616 square feet. And the total frontage on South Valley Road, where we are putting the second driveway, is 585.40 feet. The staff has recommended approval with 3 conditions. We have no issues with those 3 conditions. And we're happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay, anyone have any questions? This is an unusual one, but it's pretty simple when you look at it, what they're trying to do, so. Anyone have anything?
No.
Oh, okay,
No.
okay.
Any, oh,
Public, yes.
I was just waiting for you to open the
Yeah,
public
sorry
hearing.
about that.
So I just have a
Okay.
question. If, Billy, if you could put that, oh, Campbell Sutton, sorry.
It's okay.
If you could put that map up you just had, because when I was looking at this today, I was just, and I could be wrong, Nat, you'll know. In that area where Shimo and South Valley Road meet, that is just brutal.
Sand, it's a sand pit.
It's a sand pit and then it's a water hole, a sandy
Yeah.
water hole. So it looked like from the drawing that Paul has on there, all those little lines look like that new driveway is going to have potentially a lot of runoff into that particular area. And it just seems to me it might be adding more sand to the area or adding to the problem. And I'm just wondering if Paul could, through you, Chair,
Yep.
sort of address that. I know it's a private road and everything, but many people use it. Thank you.
Paul?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Campbell. Obviously, the owners of this property would have a concern regarding that issue also. We're proposing a shell driveway. We do have a natural low spot towards the end of the driveway, completely on our property. We're approximately 123 feet or so from that intersection, Campbell. But we can grade the driveway and would have every intention, of the owner would have every intention, I'm sure, to create a situation there that's not gonna cause any problems, because number one, they access this property from that same area you're talking about. So I appreciate the heads up on that, and I'll pass that on to my client, and I'm sure during the process of grading this driveway, we can mitigate or make sure that we're not, increasing a problem at the intersection.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Yeah. And just for the record, like this area, this is kind of consistent with the rest of the properties along this road. And it kind of drains itself. It's not, there's never really a flood or anything down there. It's just more of like, it's almost like a natural sort of leach area of for the water to go. It's not that bad, but it is, it's kind of soft in that intersection, but that's about it. Okay, so anyone else want to
You
speak?
got
on that?
Arthur's hand up now.
Oh, Arthur, sorry about that. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of quick points. I believe it was mentioned that, I believe Campbell referred to this as being a public way. It's a private way. All the roads within the Shimo
She said-
area are
She said
private
private.
ways.
She said
Okay.
private.
It's okay.
Okay. They're maintained by the Shimo Association.
Yeah.
And the other point that I would make with regard to this is that if we hadn't combined the lots together and kept them as three separate lots, we'd be able to have the secondary
right.
cut as a matter of right. So you're not giving up much here.
Right. That's actually one of the things I thought of, and then I forgot to mention it. That's exactly right. If this was a separate lot, they would get this without a permit. It would be net by right, so. Okay, is anyone else up there, really? Okay. I'll accept the motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second? Seconded by John. Dave,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Hillary,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, anyone want to make a motion?
Motion to adopt with the findings and the conditions spelled out by the staff.
Second.
Seconded by Dave or John, I can't tell.
It was me, Dave.
Dave, okay, so all those in favor, Joe,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Hillary,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, we're on to 8 Mass Ave. Dara Murphy Foundyeller, am I saying that right? Okay. Where are we at? We don't get too many out there. Hi,
Good evening.
how are you?
Good, Victoria Ewing.
I
the
know this
applicant.
spot. I park here once in a while because there's nothing going on. It's a good place to park. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
We are proposing a new boathouse garage on a vacant lot, which will be the primary and only structure on that lot, and looking for your relief in that respect.
Okay. Does anyone have anything, board, before we go to the public?
Can you just tell us a
Okay.
little bit more about the project?
Sure. I believe I included the HGC application. We are in our last round before HGC, the 16th. We just submitted our last round of revisions that they requested. We are limited to that building envelope with our Concom approval, and I believe I included the Concom approval as well. It's a two-bay structure, two-bay garage, boathouse structure, in line with the existing house, which is the same ownership across the street.
So I know it's the same owners, and they've owned it for quite some time.
Yes.
Is the legal entity the same? Are they both in the same legal entity?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Does anyone have anything? Anyone else from the
No,
board?
I mean, this, Mr. Chair, this isn't the first time we've done this with, I think, similar conditions. So I think that it seems to be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing that would have been built out there before,
Yeah,
today's world, right?
correct.
So, anyone from the public?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
No,
Oh, wait.
hold
Hang on,
on.
we have a
Not
hand up
ready yet.
online.
Not
I
yet.
can't see.
I'm still here.
Campbell's at
Sorry.
the mic.
Campbell Sutton.
Dave, it's okay.
So I read through this, and I guess my only thought was, since it's for boats and motors and, whether anything is happening in the garage that would require drainage or catchment or anything for fuel or oil from motor engines, I guess is my thought. Thank you.
Okay, it's okay. You want to comment on that?
Sure, through you, Mr. Chair. As far as I know, it's just storage, nothing, no work to be performed. It's a residential storage garage type of situation.
Okay,
Okay,
great, thanks.
okay, Campbell,
Mr.
thank
Chair,
you.
we have a hand up online.
Yep, go ahead.
Stephen Murphy.
Okay, Steve, go ahead.
Stephen, please unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay, I'm sorry for the not as technically astute as I used to be. I just got a couple of quick points on this. I'm calling on behalf of Butters. Um, is it the applicant's intention that the garage, if approved, would permit sleeping, dining, and bathing facilities?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no.
Okay. What is the purpose of the mailbox at 8 Mass Ave?
I'm unaware, but happy to follow up and answer that.
Is this an application for a boathouse, a garage, or a residential garage?
Only a boathouse garage structure, no residential facilities whatsoever.
Okay. And I'll just note that the Mass DEP order was valid for 3 years from 8/16/22, so that order is no longer valid.
And it applies to the extension that is currently in place and will
Oh, I
be
didn't,
under that.
my apologies. I didn't realize that
Yeah,
there
no
was an
problem.
extension in place.
all valid questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
thank you, sir. Is there anyone else? Billy, anyone else up there?
No.
Okay. Anyone want to make a motion to close unless there's any more comments?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Second.
seconded by Hillary. All those in favor? Dave,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Hillary,
Aye.
and acting chair votes aye.
Thank you very much.
Throw that in once in a while. Nope, that's just.
Not
to close
done
the
yet.
public hearing. That's all, hold on. Okay, anyone want to make a motion?
Well, I have a question just about the condition number 3. It's a question for our staff. So the use of the garage is strictly limited to the property owner of 9 Mass Ave. Like, technically how, I mean, clearly, if there weren't an owner right across the street and, they're using their land this way, we'd be having a very different conversation, right? So it's related to the co-ownership. So how technically is this executed, this condition that the garage is strictly limited to the
Enforcement.
property owner? I mean, is there a deed, something on the deed that links them together? And, could they sell it? Like, could you just tell me a little bit more about that?
Reach the microphone, yes.
Thank you.
So if the board grants the special permit will be recorded at the registry or at the land court, if it's with the land court, and it will be recorded against the deed. So if you do, any research for the deed or for the sale or anything like that, then it would come up as a condition enforceable by the town.
I see. So then if the owner transferred the lot across the street and transferred number 8 to a different family, there were no no longer co-owners, would the garage then be non-conforming to zoning, and therefore, I mean, what would happen?
They would be in violation of the special permit
Yeah.
and subject to enforcement by the town.
Okay, so we tell them they had to turn it into a dwelling or something like that.
Right.
That's important. So the face, if this doesn't remain in common ownership, that has to change what's being approved now.
Yes, it either needs to be sold in common ownership, or it comes back to the planning board. They can request an amendment to the special permit for the board to reevaluate.
I'm just asking because
Yeah, no, this
there's
is an
something
unusual thing.
on Union Street right now where the
Yeah.
garage was separated, and it was a pre-existing but it was non-conforming, and now it's being turned into a garage apartment, and that was approved as, so, these things do live on and different things happen, so.
Okay.
And if I can speak to this, I put that condition in the staff report, and reason being, I didn't think, say someone lives in Tom Nevers and they want to store their boats in Nantucket, I didn't think that was necessarily appropriate for the scenario.
Right, it's not consistent with the zoning, certainly.
And if I might add, I believe the last similar type of permit that was granted with this same authorization was in Sconset, and there were similar conditions put on that permit that it needed to remain in common ownership.
It's also the case that the lot is undersized.
It is pre-existing non-conforming.
Right, as a lot, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. But that would be, but they're not coming to the zoning board, they're coming to us. So are we able to grant a development of an undersized lot?
Yes, if it conforms with the setbacks and the ground cover, you need the special permit for the use of the garage because it's not accessory to anything. It stands
Yeah, that I
independently.
understand. I was wondering why they wouldn't to put anything there at all. And then just one other question for the board members. I mean, there are other vacant lots along Mass Ave there. I mean, how would we feel if everybody wanted to, I don't know, maybe people would be fine, but I just wanted to think down the line if there would be anyone who would, if we foresee any precedent that we're not comfortable with.
Mr. Chair, if I can just
Go ahead.
insert real quick. There have only been a few applications that I can think of just off the top of my head.
I know, yeah.
Where a garage has been proposed on a lot separate from the dwelling unit that it goes with. And the board has looked favorably on those when they're, next door or across the street. And I can only think of one situation where there was a vacant lot where a garage was proposed and the dwelling that would go with it wasn't anywhere in close proximity, and the board did not look favorably on that at all. And they did not get a permit.
Thank you for that background. Looks like Joe
Okay.
has his hand up.
Yep. Thank you, Hilly. Mr. Chairman, so way back in the day when my parents had a boat, we were able to use someone's standalone boathouse, if you will, and it was not linked to their property, but it was just a standalone with a dock. So we were able to go there and use that. So there is precedence, but I would say this one, I don't have a problem because it's linked to the lot across the way. But there is a history of that on Nantucket where there are people that had a garage or something that they were able to use to store, oars or whatever it would be, fishing gear. My family has a property on Tennessee Ave that my grandfather was remote, and he would go there and store his dory there and go out and go fishing, etc. So there is a precedence here. So I'm not really that bothered by this if it was broken apart, but I was more in favor because it is linked to a family, and I thought this was appropriate. That's my reasoning.
Okay. Something just crazy just happened. Okay, so okay now? Are we ready to close? We did close the public hearing, but are we ready to vote on this?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I just wanted to explore some of the different things that might be a concern. So I think it's nice that they want to have a place to put their boat near the water, near their house.
Yeah, I mean,
So I would make a motion to approve with the findings and conditions as in the staff report.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Dave,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Hillary,
Aye.
the chair votes aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I can't believe what just happened.
Are you okay?
Something ridiculous just happened. Okay. I need to, can I,
Nat,
Joe, Dave,
you want
can
me
you
to take this for a
over
minute?
2
You okay?
seconds?
Yeah. You all right? Okay, I got this. All right, Thomas C. Holt and Maya Howard, trustees, Thomas Holt, Maya Howard, 10 Bayberry Lane, Arthur Reed representing.
Thank you very much. This is another application for a real lot subdivision. Bayberry Lane. In this situation, the property was subdividable on an A&R basis rather than requiring an approval required plan. The A&R plan has already been submitted to and endorsed by the board, and now we are replacing that with a new A&R plan, which will treat it as a real lot subdivision, and the shape of the lot obviously changes in order to accomplish that. We have reviewed the staff report. All of the recommendations contained in the staff report are acceptable to us and entirely appropriate. And with that, I would invite any questions that the board may have.
Great, thank you, Arthur. Board members? Questions or concerns?
No, no.
Mr. Chair.
Um, uh, Is all the access coming from Bayberry, Arthur?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
great. Do we have, staff, do we have anyone in the public with their hand up or at the mics?
No.
All right.
In that case, motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made by Joe, seconded by Hillary. Do I have to, I'm sorry, backtrack. Do I have to activate?
You want to go
somebody?
ahead and activate somebody? Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to ask that. Abby's online? Is Abby present?
She's online. Abby? Abby?
All right, is Steven there?
We have Nat back now.
Yep,
Oh.
Steve. That's
Okay, everything okay?
I'm also here, sorry.
Nat to the rescue, Abby, you're spared.
I'm sorry about that.
No, you're good. So, I just had a motion to close the public hearing. It was made by Hillary, seconded by Joe, I believe. So I'll finish this up and then you can take over, Nat. Hillary,
So all those in favor? Are you gonna do that, Dave?
I'll
Sorry
finish
about
up that and then you
Yeah,
can
finish
take it.
that up.
So- Yep,
Okay.
so I think motion was made by Hillary, seconded by Joe to close the public hearing.
Yep,
Hillary,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Nat,
aye.
John,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. Okay, it's all
Thank
yours.
you very much.
Yeah. Oh, that's just a public hearing, Arthur.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Nat's gonna take over from here.
Okay. So do I have a motion?
No, we just closed the public hearing, Nat, so we're on to the merits.
That's what I'm saying. So, So does anyone have any questions from the board level?
No, sir.
I'd make a
Nope.
motion for approval now.
Good with the conditions, et
I'll
cetera?
second the motion.
Okay. Who made the motion?
Dave?
Dave, okay. All those in favor? Dave?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Hillary?
Aye.
The chair votes aye.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair, and
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
Thank
Arthur.
you, Arthur.
Okay.
We got to back to the A&R now.
Yep. Okay, where are we at here? Okay, for 10 Bayberry, Anna, is there a motion?
I'd make that motion to endorse.
Is there a
Second.
second? Joe?
Second.
All those in favor, Dave?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Hillary?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you. Damn it. Okay, we're on to North Water Street, 17 North Water.
No, 19
We skipped over
Folger.
19 Folger.
Wait a minute, hold on a second. You sure? Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Sorry. Okay, Carlston Phillips, Suzanne Riddle, 19 Folger Avenue. Who is representing on this? Mike Connolly and Jesse Brescher. Okay. Let me get this opened up. So we have two, are these like running together? Are we having these together, Megan and Leslie, on this? How is this
Yes.
working? This is unusual.
So yes, please discuss them
As
together.
one?
Yeah,
Okay.
because they're dependent on one another. Is Jessie
Okay.
in the audience? Are we bringing her over, or should we run through this?
I don't see Jesse online.
Mike's here too.
I can run,
Homeowners
I
are
can
here
run,
Mike
too.
is here,
I
so-
can
we
run
can-
through it
we
with
can
the
run through it.
homeowners here.
Okay. Do you want to pull up the screen? Let's do the amendment first. So you may recall that you previously granted a special permit for a secondary lot. The first request is to modify that permit and just swap the lots. They've changed their mind as to what,
Which one? they
which one
want
is
for
going to
which.
have the
Yeah,
restriction.
Yeah,
Then the second special permit request is to create a tertiary lot. So they kind of all go together in one request despite being two separate special permits. So the final outcome is shown on the screen. We have lot 1 will be the market rate lot. Lot 2 will be the secondary lot, and lot 3 will be the tertiary lot.
okay,
Okay?
yep. Okay, I'm good now.
So the only thing that we had a question on that Billy may or may not have the answer to is if there has to be any further distribution of the ground cover, or whether or not you intend to keep the structures exactly how they are.
Mr. Chairman, or Acting Chairman, before you go much further,
No,
we just have two people in the queue of attendees and they're no name. Just, can they identify themselves before we go much further? I don't know if they're for this application or the next one.
So there's someone with a 516 number I've been emailing with,
Okay.
that her name is Roberta Saint Amour. And I'm not sure about the other one.
The 781.
Yeah.
that's for North Water Street. Okay.
I'm Carl Phillips.
Yep, how you doing?
Hi. So what we were hoping to do was, as far as the ground cover allocation, was just leave enough for that tertiary on lot 3 to make it a decent 2-bedroom. So it'd be like 480, 280 square extra feet for that. And I think this is in the recommendations. And then we didn't think any was needed for the second Lot 2, and to leave for the remaining for the Lot 1 market rate.
Yeah, if you look at condition 4, I had spoken with the property owner about ground cover allowances, because if the board approves this, we shouldn't go over 7%, which is
Yeah.
what is allowed in the zoning district.
Until we fix it someday, hopefully. This is a classic of what I talked about right here. Guy's willing to do this and he's running out of ground cover. It's terrible. So how do we haven't done a tertiary lot in a while for this and run into this yet. I mean, what's the last one? Wasn't it on Milestone Road?
Yeah, and
I
they
think it
decided
was.
not to pursue that option after they obtained the
So-
special permit.
What is the flexibility for them for moving the ground cover if they need to from one to the other?
So you can redistribute it however you'd like between the 3 lots, so long as combined it doesn't exceed
7%,
the 7%,
right,
but
yeah.
that needs to be determined and made part of the decision. So if you're unsure, you could always come back and modify the permit to reallocate among the lots. It gets a little complicated as properties have been sold off and it's not under single ownership, but as long as in total you don't exceed 7, you can distribute however you'd like.
That's the intention.
Okay, and we're working on solving this. It's just not done yet.
Okay,
So we appreciate you doing this.
okay, thanks.
This is good. Okay. Does anyone have any more comments about this before we close? Is there anyone else online? Nobody online? Okay.
And no hands are raised.
So with that said, I'll set the motion to close.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Yep. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Dave,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Hillary,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
What's the pleasure? We're not done yet, but that's okay. What's the pleasure? You want to make a motion?
I don't have any comments.
Yeah.
I'd make a motion to approve both
Yeah,
applications together with the findings and conditions in
All of it.
this staff report in their
This is
entirety.
well done, by the way.
Yes,
Like,
thank you,
this is-
staff.
This is, I don't think we've actually done this yet since whenever, 3 years ago. I
I'll
think.
second that, Mr. Chair.
This is good. Thank you, Joe. All those in favor, Dave,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Hillary,
Aye.
chair votes aye. I don't mean to keep talking about this, but this is what we've been talking about for a while, solving this issue, Megan, with existing buildings and like tying their hands and coming up with a ground cover solution. So thank you very much. Okay, now we're on to 17 North Water Street. So Sarah's representing, where is she? There she is. Thank you,
Thank you, Mr.
acting chair.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Acting Chair. Sarah Alger for the applicant. My client, Kaylin Casey, is here as well. There he is, to answer any questions. And our surveyor, Art Gasparo, is online if we have any issues that he needs to address. So first of all, this is a guest house on North Water Street at 17 North Water Street. Currently has 10 rooms. Just remind you that in the bylaw under 139-2, transient residential facilities, guest houses, lodging houses, and rooming houses, I think is the other word, are allowed by special permit within a quarter mile of the CDT. I submitted a plan. This property is about 230 feet from the CDT. So the reason that this is a special permit and not by right is so that this board has the ability to, in its approval process, grant appropriate conditions that safeguard the neighborhood. So we're not asking for anything out of the ordinary. We're not asking for special exemptions. We're asking for the special permit that's contemplated in the bylaw to allow this sort of use in this particular neighborhood within a quarter mile of the CDT. I think you're probably aware that there are so many guest houses within a stone's throw, basically, of this property. There's Graydon House, there's Periwinkle, there's Brass Lantern, Veranda House, Chapin House, the White Elephant, and the Carlisle. I mean, I'd say the White Elephant is kind of an outlier. Most of these are, most of these are kind of old homes that have been turned into guest houses. And my client is an individual. I just want to, there was some letter, I think, that was written in that made it seem as if he was an off-island conglomerate. As a matter of fact, he's been living here for the past 2 years. This past summer, he lived in the property and operated it. He's a single member of this LLC. LLCs are getting a lot of bad press these days, but I think they're kind of maligned unjustly. They are not corporations, or they can be, but most of the time they're not. In this litigious day and age, you'd be absolutely crazy to own a guest house and not have it in an LLC to protect yourself from the liability. That's the purpose of these. That's one of the purposes of a limited liability company. It's right in the title. But they're not necessarily corporations. They, in fact, can be completely disregarded entities and treated as individuals. They can be partnerships. They can be S corps. They can also be corporations. So I think it's important to understand. It's just important to understand that. Mr. Casey purchased this property in June of 2025. He would like to expand by up to, I think, this shows 429 feet. He has 470 feet of available ground cover. The addition that he proposes to make will be completely compliant dimensionally. He'd like the ability to go from 10 rooms to 16 rooms. I think what we've been hearing over the past, 5 or 6 years is how we need more guest rooms, we need more lodging, we need more accommodations. Well, this is kind of the perfect place for that to happen. It's within walking distance of town, it's within walking distance of the boats, it's in amongst other guest house uses, and guest houses, unlike short-term rentals, tend to be very quiet because the people who stay there have to be considerate of the other guests. Whereas when you have a short-term rental, you're being considerate or inconsiderate to the people living around you, but you don't necessarily, your people that are also staying there are kind of on the same wavelength as you are. With a guest house, you do tend to have a much quieter use, with people going to bed fairly early and not partying all night. The experience that Mr. Casey has had running this guest house is that people don't bring cars. He makes an effort to discourage people, both on his website and in all of his printed materials, to discourage people from bringing cars. And he's finding that for the vast majority, I think he said he had 2 guests that brought a car over this past year. So people just don't bring cars when they're staying in town. They use public transportation. He provides transportation for guests as they need it. They go on the bus, they walk, they use bikes. As part of this renovation, I think it's important to note that part of this renovation, when it's done, will include bringing in a fully sprinkled building. Currently, the building is not sprinkled, it wasn't required to be, but it will be after this renovation. And I think that's actually a benefit to the surrounding buildings. And I think 16 rooms, looking at the average of rooms in the area, even taking out the bigger hotels, the White Elephant, the Harbor House, White Elephant, whatever you call it, the Jared Coffin House and Veranda House, we have in the area an average room size of 16, so he'd be bringing himself into line with the average number of guest rooms. All the conditions in the staff report were acceptable. I actually thought I would add one that wasn't there, I don't think. I think you might want to say that there won't be any exterior construction in the, I don't know what your range is, but whatever it is it Memorial Day to Labor Day?
The June 15th sort of pretend bylaw that really isn't one, but that's what we do in town, or have been traditionally, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that outside
Yes,
construction.
yes.
But we can do something that is modified to what their situation is at the time,
Right,
like we've done before.
right.
You know,
And unless you have any other questions, I'm sure there are people from the public here to.
yeah. Anyone from the board want to talk about this for a second? I mean, I have lots to say about this whole issue of the zoning and all the different stuff, but I'm going to hold that for a second.
If I could now, I just.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Because I just think it's important on this application to understand a couple things, right? That this isn't an MCD, there is a management plan, and we've approved many of these, and we've also called. I can remember one on Cliff Road, I think it might have been the Life House, that we called back in because there was complaints and concerns about the management of their guest house. And they had to come back before us, and we had a long discussion with them, and I think we straightened it out. So I don't have great concerns about this. I think with a good management plan, and we could even add a condition for them to come back and see us in a year. But I think that they're building within zoning. I think it's an appropriate use in the area, and I don't honestly see problems with this application. Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Dave. Go ahead, Hillary.
well, with all due respect to Dave, I mean, I think we can listen to the questions that people might
no,
have
no.
and
Yeah.
everything.
I
This is
agree.
stuff we might learn something that's concerning. I mean, I certainly have some questions that I want to ask.
Before
I'm not saying we shouldn't answer questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Before we continue, I just want to make a couple of points about North Water Street and the CDT, and when we changed the CDT in town. We also reduced ROH from 50% ground cover to 40% about
I think it was pre-COVID, so
5
maybe
years ago?
6 years ago.
6, yeah. That gets forgotten in our little world over here. We forget things, right? A lot. So I like to kind of remind people of things. That's a big difference between 50 and 40 in the ROH, which is what this is in.
Correct.
Back when we had parking fights, and we were at the high school cafeteria for our meetings, Leslie, and we had some pretty crazy situations with parking at places that you will never be able to have parking. So CDT, thank God we got that in. So now the places that are still in ROH don't get caught in the parking snafu situation, and they have a way to expand a little bit without it becoming a contentious issue over a parking space that isn't even needed and no one has in town. So with that said, Billy, what do we got online?
We have 3 hands raised. We have Beth Freitas, Ann Davis, and Malcolm McNabb.
Okay.
I have a question,
okay.
Mr. Acting Chair. If we have clarifying questions, should we ask them now before the public hearing, or should I ask them?
No, go ahead.
Okay, because
I'm
I just
sorry, I'm
had
assuming we're
like
all
wanted to
set.
get some facts out.
Yep. Sure. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
So I had a question about the area that is for exclusive use, which is this little pointy part of the lot. What does that mean?
That is an easement in favor of an abutter. They have the right to use that back piece, so it's not used as part of this property.
Okay, and so this property, you said that Mr. Casey bought it in June, so the MCD is in the name of the prior owner,
That's correct.
the one that we have in our
I
packet.
think so, yeah.
So this property, so the MCD that we granted was to a prior owner, but my question is for staff, it's transferred with,
Special permits always travel with the land
Okay.
unless conditioned otherwise.
okay. But the abutter owns the property on 2 sides of this, correct? So,
I don't know that he does anymore.
but anyway, this property, it's number 17, does not have exclusive use of this little point part, right?
Correct.
Okay, but I'm noticing that the application says it's totally conforming with zoning, so he doesn't need to ask any permission to build this little addition, is that
Just
correct?
just the
HCC
just
Just the
process.
use,
the use and the parking.
okay, all right. I'm not concerned about the parking because
No, but
guest
that's-
house, people come. I will say that on the website, it could be a little bit stronger to say that there is no parking provided. It was like a very minor mention, kind of buried in the policies page. And
All
I
right,
think
well,
the
we could probably
spirit of the
make that-
MCD is a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Happy to make it.
So my main question about this is, when the MCD was granted to the prior owner, the condition, we agreed to waive the inclusionary housing provision, but we also received a condition that 3 people would be living at this property.
Right,
So where are they, and then now it's going to be 4 people.
correct.
So where are they living?
They're living in the building. There are rooms in the building in which they live.
Well, I certainly should hope that they would be living in rooms in the building, but this building has 13 rooms, and 11 of them are being rented, and the proposed, so anyway, if you could just explain
I'm going to
that,
let
thank you.
Kalen explain that because he knows the interior of the building better than I do.
Thank you.
So this past summer, there was myself and then an assistant GM, and then we had 2 part-time cleaners. The GM, we actually put in one of the guest bedrooms. There's rooms on the lower level, the lowest level.
basement?
You can call it the basement, but it does have full windows. That property is built into, if you think of the Veranda House Hill, it is sloping. And so you get full windows in the basement, and there are rooms down there. We had the assistant GM on the first floor, and then our 2 cleaners that were both half part-time declined housing because they have jobs elsewhere on island that provide, but they had the ability to live there if they wanted to.
So the assistant GM lived in the building this past summer on the ground level floor, the first floor?
The first floor.
Okay,
yes.
and nobody was living in the basement?
No,
Okay, but okay, so there was one person living?
no, I was there as well.
You were also living, and you
Yes.
were living in one of the guest rooms?
I was.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
the
so
basement needs a little love before it's like,
you took the one with the shared bath, I guess? Okay, so next year, there will be 4 people living on the property.
yes,
And
that's,
where will they be living?
we're gonna renovate the entire I'm gonna call it the basement,
Okay,
to include, proper living conditions.
okay, so there will be full Board of Health approved
Yes.
occupancy in the basement for 4 people? will be living there full-time?
That's the assumption, yes.
Okay.
If we use the same cleaners,
Yeah.
they very likely will decline, but I'm comfortable saying that I'd ideally like to have 2 full-time employees as we grow in room count, that are only work here for the entire duration of our season.
Okay. I just didn't understand why we would waive the inclusionary housing for an application where the applicant was saying they were, going to be putting people on site.
Can I ask staff about that? We had, am I wrong on this, Leslie and Megan? We had a lot of, this is, we don't get these applications very often.
I did watch the meeting.
No,
so-
I don't mean that. I'm talking
Oh.
about a long time ago before we had Zoom and everything else. We had a lot of strange requirements with some of these projects, like bus passes. We used to actually require that you bought bus passes. I know, it sounds like 100 years ago, but that's what we did.
We required it here.
I know we did.
Yeah,
We
I
did
mean,
here? Well,
it's in the
okay,
MCD.
but some of that stuff is not, it's kind of a little weird occasionally, but bottom line is, I think that, is that one of the reasons why we have that in there as far as the inclusionary housing or waiving it? Because people weren't using it? We want to make it a choice for them with what they're doing in the particular project?
I think in a lot of cases like this, they are providing housing, it just didn't meet the strict definition that we had in our
They're
zoning.
doing it, but it's not, it's each place is kind of different and unique to what they can do.
So because it's not a kitchen in the basement, it doesn't meet the definition of inclusionary housing? Is that the issue?
I don't have the definition handy, but I would say that in a lot of the hotels, they provide rooms for their staff, but they're not dwelling units.
I see.
Right.
They're rooms with other common
Right.
facilities.
So we waived it because they were housing people, but they weren't meeting the
What we would call
the
it.
definition.
Yeah,
I understand.
yep. So,
Okay, but nonetheless, there was only one person, no, there were 2 people living on site, and there were proposed to be 3.
Correct.
yeah.
Okay. Those are my questions for now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does anybody else have
Yeah,
questions?
does anyone else? Dave, John, or Joe?
No.
No, sir.
Okay, Mr. Sad.
So I'm going to open it up.
Yeah.
Beth Freitas, please unmute, Beth.
Okay, Beth.
You're up first.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you so much. So I'm calling in as a resident of 48 years of North Water, and we do have a residential neighborhood on North Water as well as on Step and Ash Street and Ash Lane. And we are families, and we do enjoy the family nature of Nantucket, and we come every year, and many of us stay through the fall season. Yes, and since I was a little kid, there were bed and breakfasts, and that's great. And I do want to applaud the new owner for taking such great care of the property, and especially the sprinklers, given the veranda house fire. We're all a little fragile, as you can well imagine, around that. So I want to thank you so much for doing that. I guess I just want to ask the board to think about this precedent. I know that Hillary talked about a precedent on Mass Ave with the boathouse. If everybody gets to expand by 60%, if we just expand the bed and breakfast by 60%, we really are going to be above capacity. And I wonder if we're not already there at North Water. So I want to think about the capacity and adding 60% more to that house. So 10 going to 16 guest rooms. It's a lot more. It's a lot more people. I understand you're saying that they won't have cars, but no one can guarantee that. And it's already very hard to park in our neighborhood, as you all well know. So I do have some concerns, and I just wanted to voice them. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Billy, who's next?
Next, we have Ann Lingman Davis.
Okay, I know who she is. Hi, Ann. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Chairman Lowell. Can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm Ann Lingaman Davis of 10 Ash Street. My parents, Sue and Byron Lingaman, purchased their house on Ash in 1965. This is where I grew up. I'm fiercely protective of the fragile nature of this important and historic neighborhood. Our greatest concern is intensity of use. Increasing the bedroom count from 10 to 16 is a 60% increase of the commercial use. When the major commercial development permit was granted 7 months ago, it was on the basis that there would be no increase in size. The latest request is substantial and contravenes the earlier agreement. While we welcome this being returned to its original function as a guest house, we do have concerns about the precedent the expansion may set for other commercial activities in the neighborhood. Some important points to make that I'm sure some of my neighbors in the, we have about 20 neighbors in the group, and I'll elaborate. I think some of them may elaborate on them tonight, but questions of use. How many people are going to be in that house? I see that there are additional rooms for staff and guests, and I was listening, and I guess some people are going to be in the basement and stuff. But the material is conflicting. I thought these extra rooms were going to be used for staff, but they're not. They're going to be additional guest rooms. That's what I initially thought that the use was going to be. We have questions about the easement exclusive use area in the backyard at 17 North Water. It appears the same entity, Core Investments under different LLCs, holds the easement behind 17 North Water. They owns the adjacent barn at 8 C Street as well as 50 North Water. Who does own and control that easement? I'm confused. The barn has been used for at least one event with a tent. I'm not speaking of the fundraiser house tour this past weekend over Stroll, but an earlier event. It appears that the large easement exclusive use area in the backyard of 17 can be used by the barn property, but I'm not sure. How does this affect ground cover? How can we talk about the expansion of 17 without understanding this property's relationship to the barn and the barn's intended use? There was talk of Lola viewing the barn as its function space. Is this true, or is this just some rumor I heard? I don't know. On to a separate point. To add to this already congested neighborhood, putting in more rooms, additional density is reckless after the Veranda House fire. This is an incident that is raw and emotional for all of us. I'll wrap up, but finally, I'd like to speak on my mother's largest concern. She wishes she could be here tonight, but I couldn't do the Zoom thing, so I'll have to represent her. She said the slow chipping away of the character of the neighborhood when there is more commercial interests introduced. This is primary. Her concern is the slow chipping away of the character of the neighborhood, and this is primarily a residential area. My mother said, we want our neighborhood to remain family-oriented, not one for weekend revelers. We respectfully ask the planning board to hold the line on the original permit granted. Please, no expansion here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Next up, we have Malcolm McNabb.
Yes, sir, Malcolm. Welcome.
Greetings. Thank you all. There used to be a time where when I first came to North Water Street, I could actually park a car on the street. And I know you've kind of poo-pooed that about parking, but I think it's a major issue because for a couple reasons, we have lost parking spaces. As I said, I used to park on North Water Street, or my friends would park on North Water Street. Step Lane lost 2 parking spaces this year. Rightfully so, because it was right by Veranda House and the you could not get a fire truck up that road. Last week, the select board, I'm a little familiar with that, took away parking spaces on Easton Street up the north end of North Water Street. And then if we go to 15 North Water, which was sold recently with the 2 lots on behind it, which was 8 and 10 step lane, the parking space for 15 North Water was actually 10 C Street. And that is now a separate lot that I understand is for sale. It is now grass and fenced off. So we've lost the parking for 15. And that has, I don't know how many rooms in for sale. So I imagine there'll be 10 people, 12 people in that building eventually. And 10 C Street, which year round had probably 5, 6, 7, 8 parking spaces, is now a barn and with no parking space. So I think you should consider and go back to think a little bit about the development of North Water Street. I agree with Sarah. She made some great points, but we have to remember that what's happened is we've expanded and cars seem to spontaneously generate from somewhere. I mean, people say we don't have cars or inns don't have cars, but they're cars, my friends. And it's making the neighborhood very different than it was when I first came here in 2007. So just please keep that in mind. And I think the select board and the planning board, we have to all, both of us, come to grips with the fact that we have a real parking problem. And we keep kind of putting it off and putting it off. And if we want to really plan and really do what's right for this island, we need to address that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Next
Is
up,
there anyone else, Billy?
Yeah, we have a
Before we
few
get through
more.
to Dr. Butterworth? Okay.
We have a few more.
You want to go next? Why don't he go next? Because the other ones, these are newer ones, right?
Yeah, we went through the first 3 that have their
Okay.
hands raised. If you want
no.
to take in person, and then we can go back to them.
Why don't you go ahead now, and then we'll go back to online. Yeah, is that okay? Yep. Okay. It just gets confusing when you switch back and forth. I'm sorry.
George Butterworth, 23 North Water Street. I would just like to second what Malcolm said. Parking is just a tremendous problem and much worse in the past 2 years. Basically, 15 and 17 cooperated. They're all under one ownership. They had a large parking area behind them that provided parking for 15 and 17. And the little guest cottage that was out behind 15 and 17. And now barn's gone up. They've hacked all the land off of 15. The area that could be parking is now grass. I don't know what the easement area is. I don't understand that. I certainly hope that's not counting toward ground coverage for 17, because it's no longer, there's a split rail fence cutting it off from the building. It certainly looks like it's part of the new lot that's going in there. The new lot that got dropped in, which took out the backyard of both 15 and 17, is now a new lot that's up for sale separately. And yeah, we've lost 8 parking spaces in the last year in the neighborhood, the 2 on Step Lane, and I was amazed that they thought they need to wipe out both of those for a fire truck to get up there, but I don't drive fire trucks.
Separate conversations, but
And the
yes.
6 that they just, I was pretty stunned to see the 6 disappear from Easton Street, which is usually where I end up having to park. We have off-street parking for 1 car. Our second car, I usually have to go down Easton Street, turn around, because famously, you know, we did all appreciate that Nantucket Hotel got rescued after it was totally demolished by the first developer. But, you know, they had a parking lot originally. They have no parking now. And they act like people don't park at the hotel. Well, I can tell you, they sure park for the gym. And they market that gym year round, so that even in the winter, there's probably 5 or 6 cars parked on Easton Street, which are people who live on Nantucket elsewhere on the island who drive their car to go to the gym at the hotel. So There's a tremendous increase in demand for parking in the area as the parking disappears. And that is my concern. And yes, 6 rooms additional, a 60% increase, and that's not counting what they're doing for housing employees. It just seems unfortunate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is the problem with this type of application. It's been a long time since we've had something like this. And then it turns into 2007 with the 4 Chestnut. I'm never gonna forget Chestnut. Is anyone else?
Yeah, we have people
Sorry.
online.
Go ahead, Billy.
We have James Freitas.
Okay. James?
Hi, thank you very much. I'll try and be brief, but can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll try and be brief. My wife Elizabeth spoke earlier. You know, just in a litany of parking that's been lost, I'll remind people of the old Denby real estate. They used to have the beautiful garden and the huge parking lot that is now turned into the White Heron Theater. So there were another 6 spaces that were lost in the neighborhood back then. So I've been coming with my wife now, Beth, since the late 80s. I'll just say a couple things. First, you know, the attorney described this as a neighborhood which has a number of guest rooms, you know, but she left out what you're hearing from all the residents. Is there's also a lot of family homes that have been in families for a very, very long time. It's not one or the other, it's a mix. That's what makes it work. And I think that buffer around the major commercial area, around the major streets downtown, is again a thing that's very attractive about Nantucket. So, and again, these folks can't promise when people are going to go to bed or who won't bring a car and when they're going to be working outside or leaving trash on the streets, which we deal with every day as a neighbor and a resident. So I think, again, the expansion, what I don't understand is the property's bought with a license for 10 rooms. And then not a few months later, you know, kind of in the dead of winter, there's an application to increase it to 60%. So I imagine the math worked at 10 rooms. And I would heartily ask the board to maintain the balance in the neighborhood and ask folks to live with the rules that were in place when they purchased the property. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Amy Eldridge.
Amy, good evening.
Good evening, Amy Eldridge. I just want to make a few comments that at town meeting, Blue Flag in May was in front of us for zoning changes at 7, 9, and 11 North Water Street. And it seemed like that was going to easily slide through till I got up and asked, isn't this across the street from the Veranda House? And I think people are a little gun shy with, you know, an almost a second Great Fire on Nantucket a few years ago, just after July 4th weekend, in a very densely populated area. And I just don't want to forget that. I'm dear friends with somebody from Step Lane who is in attendance this evening. And I just want to remind people that this is very thick, old buildings in this area. And we saw the devastation that could have been way worse had our fire department not done such a great job. And I just worry for the neighbors, and I understand what they're saying. And I would hope that you guys would consider going along with what was originally permitted or requested versus the 60%, because it's very thick down there. And then you've got the parking, and it's just scary. And, you know, people are living kind of in fear, and there's actually people still not back in their homes from the Veranda House fire. So I just want people to consider these things when we're making these decisions about how thickly settled that historic district area of that street is and the surrounding area. It's intense. Thank you.
Nat?
Yes.
That, with all due respect to Amy, I just want to point out that with this expansion, this whole building will now have a sprinkler system in it where it didn't before. So I just think that if anything, that will make it safer than it was before the expansion.
And we still have one last hand raised. We have Candace Poole.
Okay. Hi, Candace.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Candace Poole Neistat. I'm at 1 Ash Street. Bought the house about 5 years ago with my husband. We've got 2 kids who are now 7 and 11, and we love our neighborhood. We're friends with the VCs next door. I'm friends with Beth and Jim. I love it. My windows are on my bedroom window is on North Water Street. And sorry, I get nervous when I speak in public. I would like to speak to the quality of life issue that an extra 12 guests nightly will bring to our quiet little neighborhood that I feel like we're holding on by dear thread to keep as residential as possible and as quiet and as bed and breakfasty as we can. 12 more people every night. It's already like drunk people walking home from the bars, keeping my kids up. Their window also faces North Water. The parking, I know it sounds trite. It is a huge deal. I pay for a residence parking permit and I still can't find parking. And to say that that these people are going to come on bikes is just not realistic. I wanted to also bring up, let's see, I wrote it down. Again, very nervous to speak. Oh, the barn at 17 Northwater. So my kids were walking. They walked into the barn because the door was open. And I went in to find them. That's obviously not a barn to store cars. It's got antique floors, antique wood, which you would not store an old car that drips oil. Upstairs, it has what looks like a bar, and that's it. It's not a kitchen, it's a bar with beverage fridges and slop sinks. So we've got a barn that's going to be used for entertainment. We've got 17 Northwater that is now being divided and putting up another home. And I understand that the applicant is requesting something that's not taking up too much room. It's only 4 more rooms. But it's not about the fact that it's behind the house and not visible to anyone else. It's the idling of the garbage trucks that they have more stuff. It's the laundry deliveries to and from. And now I have no idea about the employees living on site now, because if there's 6 more rooms, does that mean there are going to be another 2 to 4 rooms in the basement? Is that something that's not on the paperwork? So again, like parking, yes, but quality of life, it's a very slippery slope. It's a really wonderful neighborhoods. My kids love walking around by themselves. They feel very safe, but it is loud at night. And an extra 12 guests nightly in a very loud summertime environment, I'm just begging to please consider not allowing this. And lastly, if the owner bought this as a business investment, knowing there were only 10 guest rooms, it just seems fishy that it would be, dropped on as an application, again, in the middle of winter. Like, no, like, to know that it wasn't going to be profitable without extra rooms, it seems a little whatever the word is. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much. And again, family really concerned.
Thank you. So,
We have more hands up online.
yeah,
We have, Amy Eldridge has her hand raised again, but we do have a 516 number that hasn't spoken yet, and I can allow them to talk, but they need to identify themselves first.
Her name is Roberta St. Amour. I've been communicating
Okay.
via email.
she's on Ash Street. Or actually,
Roberta,
one of the
please unmute.
Good evening, Roberta.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much for calling me. Thanks for helping organize everyone. I am Archie St. Amour, Roberta St. Amour. I live at 2 Ash Lane. And quite honestly, what I can say about this area is that we are a neighborhood through and through. And I'm so happy to hear some of my other neighbors on this call today. And it's just really just heartwarming to know that we come together and we really are trying to preserve our neighborhood and be together. And so I think it's a little saddened to me that when you guys first started talking, it sort of sounded like this was a no-brainer in your mind. But to me, it sort of does need to be discussed a little bit more that here this person bought this property no less than 2 years ago at 10 rooms. And of course, right away, we're talking about expansion. And we keep talking about this idea of a tipping point in Nantucket. And it's, yeah, okay, only 6 more rooms here, 6 more rooms there. It brings the average up, like Sarah said. But you can't really compare that to apples of what's really going on, because it just keeps raising the amount of people, the noise, the traffic. I mean, saying that they don't bring cars is just ridiculous. And I think Malcolm really did talk very, very well about the parking situation that we have in our neighborhood as well. So, you know, I just would like you to consider what everyone said. I'd really echo everything that they said. Just because you can increase it to 16 rooms doesn't mean you should. And the sprinkler system was fantastic. It was really wonderful that they're going to put that in, because obviously we had the huge veranda house issue. But keep the sprinkler system in now with the 10 rooms. Please don't increase it, because it really does create a quality of life issue for all of us that really are trying to keep it as a neighborhood. I think it's really, you know, like everyone has said, it's really a density issue and a quality of life issue.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Emily, why don't you go ahead and we'll break this up a little bit on land and in the air.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Acting Chair. Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land and Water Council. I actually wanted to ask sort of a clarifying question based on a point that Dr. Butterworth raised. My interpretation of the plan is that the exclusive use area, as it's labeled, is part of 17 North Water, and so counts towards 17 North Water's ground cover ratio. And it's interesting to hear if a split rail fence has been put up there, kind of dividing that portion from the property. And I just wanted to confirm, I haven't looked at the easement or read it, but I just wanted to confirm that there's not an easement that would somehow enable that portion of property to also go towards the ground cover on an adjacent lot. And I just wanted to clarify that.
Sarah?
Thank you.
I can confirm that's not the
Okay.
case. So the ground cover always goes with the lot despite whatever easements may be in place. So it doesn't double count.
Thank you. Sarah, could you comment on the fence? Is there a fence? And how are we to interpret
Yeah,
that?
there is a fence because they have the exclusive use to use it. I mean, I think if you guys are going to get into discussing easements, you're going to open up Pandora's box in so many ways. But on this particular one, I will just tell you that this allows all lawful purposes except for the construction or maintenance of structures of any type. It doesn't allow motor vehicles, trailers, boats, recreational vehicles, or other equipment to be parked, stored, or maintained within the easement area. So, in other words, it's an easement. They get the right to use it, but they can't use it for ground cover, they can't use it for setback, they can't use it for storage, parking, anything like that. It's
but
more
they
like
can
a
put a fence,
recreational.
yeah.
And I think it's important, you've taken a lot of testimony about this barn. This barn has
That was going to be my next question.
absolutely nothing to do with Mr. Casey and his property.
Thank you.
It's on an adjacent property, and
I know.
I don't know.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
I had some questions for
ahead.
Mr. Casey.
Okay.
Would that be
George,
okay?
just hold
Could
on
I-
a second.
But I think
okay?
there's a woman here
But-
who wants to speak.
Yeah, let her speak. Well, do you,
I don't care.
I mean, I didn't know we were going back so long and all this stuff we used to talk about. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Susan Renzulli. I own 5A Step Lane, and I was one of the people awakened at 6:30 in the morning when the veranda house fire violently started ripping through our neighborhood. My boyfriend at the time, Frank Harris, broke his foot trying to run around and help guests get out of the veranda house. And it was a nightmare that we will never get over in our neighborhood. And the reason that the veranda house caught on fire was because the only employee that was living on site that summer was a busboy that had only arrived on island a few weeks earlier. they had been told by, I think you guys, when they did their renovation years ago, that they were required to keep a manager living on site. There was no manager on site. There was a young foreign man that was smoking at 6 o'clock in the morning, improperly disposed of his cigarette, and destroyed our neighborhood. So I have a lot of concern about the density of another guest house expanding and maybe not so efficiently or properly staffing that house to make sure that they're making sure that they're protecting us as neighbors. We are a family neighborhood. I'm so happy to have heard all my neighbors speak up to that. I just get very shaky and scared about the thought of more density, more innocent souls sleeping in beds with potentially not the right person watching out over that property and making sure that they're safe. And of course, we all know the Veranda House didn't have sprinklers. We all also know, as neighbors that live in that neighborhood, when they did their renovation, they kind of pushed the envelope on certain things we think, we saw. Anyway, I'm just wanting to talk about the density and the proper use of a guest house, the proper size of a guest house in a neighborhood where they all traditionally were very cute, quaint, smart guest house. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh my God.
Well,
Okay, so you want to go with what you were
well,
gonna
I don't
say?
know. I did have some questions for Mr. Casey, which I could ask when is the right time for me to ask those questions? Or do we have
You wanna-
many
How
more
many more people
people?
are on?
We have Amy Eldridge and Malcolm McNabb back on for second
Okay,
comments.
so
Sure,
let's,
and Dr.
okay,
Butterworth wanted
let's
to say
have
something.
George talk next, and then we'll,
I can hold my questions.
you can
so-
wait, yeah, okay. Go ahead, George, sorry.
The relevance of the barn issue, which was just brought up as being totally irrelevant, it just shows what has happened in the last 2 years in that neighborhood. That for many years, the Rosses owned the 17,
So, yeah.
and they parked out back. And the land that they parked is gone. So they had 10 rooms, and they had a large area to park their vehicles, and now there's 0 area to park vehicles, and we're going to try to increase the number of rooms from 10 to 16. So the barn, although no longer connected physically with the property, it's very relevant to the issue of what has happened in that immediate neighborhood in the last 2 years. Thank you.
But what you're talking about, in fairness, is uses that were sort of just existing the way it's always been back in the day. I know exactly
Well,
what
it was
property
very,
you're
it
talking
was very
about.
cooperative. The Rosses and
I
their
know.
brother, there was a brother and sister owning the 2 houses. The 3
But
properties were
you're
held
You're making
jointly,
my point.
and the parking was out
Back when
back.
it was free, back when no one cared, back when it was just, we just lived here or we didn't live here, we rented, we moved to our other house. I mean, we're trying to mix the past with today. It's not easy.
Right, but
because
right now,
what-
we've gotten it out, that's one of the very few properties, 17 is one of the very few properties that doesn't even have 1 parking space
Right.
and no potential for getting 1 parking space. So the situation is just getting worse and worse. So instead of a property with 10 guest rooms and 0 parking, and the idea that the manager is not going to have a car, are you kidding me?
Okay.
There's no parking for anyone who lives in that house now, 0. And they've also just set it up, the 15 could carve up what the little bit of lawn they have left, but the way 15 is set up now, it's where they used to park is an additional lot for sale, which it sounds like the additional lot gets the benefit of the easement there. I mean, the easement just seems like kind of a joke, really. I mean, I don't know if the legal thinks it is. So the land is sort of part of 15, but they can't really, the other people have exclusive use of it. It's just like, oh my God. So 15 is on a very, very small lot now. I couldn't believe that they still had 5,000 square feet, and they don't if you cut out the easement. My last statement.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Butterworth.
Okay, back to Amy and then to Malcolm. Okay.
Hi, Amy Eldridge, through the chair to Mr. Iverson. I just want to remind you guys that the Veranda House fire started outside, and it can quickly spread to other buildings. The sprinklers inside the building are great, but with the proximity of how close a lot of that building is down there, it doesn't matter if it has sprinklers or not, because if it started on the outside, it's going to spread. And I want you guys to consider that when we're talking about the density. But that fire at the veranda house started physically outside. Thank you.
Oh, it's true. And he says a good point.
And
Malcolm.
Malcolm McNabb.
Malcolm.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to be brief. I think George said a lot. What I was going to say is the past is important. I disagree with you there, because in the past, the parking with that barn is important, because that barn space provided a great deal of parking space, and that's gone, however it was. And the past is important. The island will never be the same as it was, but we have to start thinking about how we want it to be in the future. Thank you.
The land was sold, right? So the land that was being used was the Ross's land, or was it a neighbor's land?
I think he's just talking about the street parking.
No, he's talking about the backyard.
Oh,
He's
I
talking
see.
about the back.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's what makes it comparable to the past, because they owned it all. I mean, they're allowed to sell it. I don't know what the answer
Should
is
we hear from
to
Campbell
that.
and
But
then
anyway, go
maybe-
ahead. I knew this was going to happen. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, hopefully I'm the last one in the room anyway. Campbell Sutton, so I had a couple things to say that probably don't relate to a lot of the important points other people have been making. Because when you look at its location, it really is hemmed in on both sides by long and tall buildings. So the White Elephant is right next door, and I mean, within 10 feet is the wall to the White Elephant. So I can see where, I can see where an extension or an addition would not be out of character with the immediate surroundings. Now, to speak to the sort of historic feel of downtown, I think we do need to be more protective of it. It has been changing on a, by lot basis, but not with, sort of the air view of what's happening in the neighborhood. So I think people do have some points to be concerned about the loss of the historic integrity of that area. Whether this one building will hold it all together or not, I don't know. And I think when I was reading the application, I think they had a piece in there on if they did this, they could add 2 more rooms for 12. And if they, all staying within the current structure. And if they went to the 3rd floor, then they could get 14, so 4 more rooms. So I'm just saying there seemed to be some planning for different options. I don't know, versus the 16. And probably thinking about the number of rooms in the basement is an important piece as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Campbell.
We have one more public hand up from Candace Poole, and you've had Joe Topham's hand up for a little bit.
Yeah, did Candace already, she already spoke?
She already spoke
Okay.
once.
Joe, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I mean, one thing I want to say that but not to go the back and forth, but veranda house, that outside porch should have been sprinkled now, and that's the way it's going. The other part of that is this house in new structure that'll be renovated will be brought up to code. So it's going to have to meet all the necessary codes because they're doing enough work to kind of trigger that they have to have a sprinkler system in there. So it means egress, wall boards, etc. All that is going to be within there and be contained. And one thing that everyone needs to be mindful of is that I'm sure no one's even aware of this, but right now at the State House, that the Mass Fire Association is coming forward with houses of a certain circa that are going to have sprinkler systems put in. So based on the conversation I've had with a firefighter, I would say this whole entire downtown core, residentially, is going to get sprinkler systems. So, this is something that's coming that is a concern not only for the commercial aspect of what we're doing, but also this has to meet the code. This has to be brought up to code, egress and stairways and all this other good things. But the other part of it is they can't be pointing the finger at this house or this structure in its usage and say that that's the problem. I think the other problem is you need to look at what you're doing and what is going to be the problem within your neighborhood, because it could have been anyone outside smoking. It could have been an STR owner that has rented to someone and then that person goes outside and has a cigarette. It could be someone just walking by. It could be an electrical spark. Anything within this neighborhood, because of old wiring, could cause these problems. So I think the fear mongering that is going on needs to stop. Let's just talk about the rooms. Let's talk about the usage. Let's just stick to that. That's what's important. Other than the rest of the stuff, I think we're getting way off topic, and enough of this.
Thank you, Joe. Is anyone else?
No.
Oh, sorry, Hilly.
That's okay.
I'm trying to make sure.
No,
we
no,
don't-
that's okay.
Sorry.
I think, did Candace have something new that she wanted to say?
Her hands up, we can.
I'm happy to hear from Candace if,
Yep,
and
let's
then I
let
think
her-
we can maybe close the public hearing.
Sorry, just really quick. I just wanted to say that like the reason we bought in the Central Historic District was because of the rules and keeping things as is. And I wanted to just have everybody consider when one person's concern for commerce outweighs the neighborhood's request for to maintain a sort of limit on density and expansion. That's all. I just want to, put that out there. And the sighing isn't helpful either. And the barn issue, I understand, doesn't have to do with 15, but it's an example how one permit gets done, another permit gets done, a house may be built. It's one thing at a time that slowly chips away at what makes the island great, and especially the Central Historic District. That's it. Just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Candace. Again,
Should we close the public hearing?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't want
So-
to shut
Oh,
anyone
yeah.
off. That wants to put their hand up again online. Okay, go
Oh, yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, go ahead, sir. You've never been pummeled like this in your life, have you? Welcome
Public
to
speaking
Nantucket.
is
20
my
years ago.
fear, so you'll probably hear my voice shake. I apologize. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't first start by saying that I appreciate and respect all the neighborhood's concerns. And I don't think anything I'm going to say tonight is going to fully appease them, but the best way that I'll earn their respect and trust is through good stewardess, being a good steward of this property going forward. I did get to meet a lot of the neighbors this summer, including some that spoke tonight. And I think the neighbors that did meet me this summer saw the sweat, work, tears, thankfully no blood, that we put into the property this summer, that trying to make it work and be a productive part of the neighborhood without just being a disturbance. One kind of point of clarification, I just wrote down a couple comments as people were talking. I think there is a little confusion about who I am and the neighboring parcels. So the Ross family did own 15 North Water, 17 North Water, and then 8 C Street. They own those 3 properties. They operated the 3 properties as 2 guest houses, Hussey House and Easton House. Hussey House, which had 5 rooms available for guests, and then space for some of their staff and family members. That's now been turned into a single-family home that's on the market for sale. It is not part of me. Core Investments is the entity from Boston that bought 15, 17, and 8 from the Ross family. And then in June of this year, I purchased from Core just 17 North Water. There's a barn on 8C Street, and then Core also created this new lot that is not associated with me in any way. Just want to make that kind of point of clarification. When I was putting together some materials for the presentation that we submitted to the board, I told Sarah my biggest concern was that 60%, six rooms added on top. It sounds like such a scary percentage. And so I went through and pulled together the stats on the 34 remaining lodging establishments that are still on this island and tried to slice the data in every way that we could to help you wrap your head around the numbers. So there's 34 lodging establishments on island. The average has 27 rooms. If we only look at the establishments in town, there's the average is 22 rooms. And then we took it a step further just to look at, and this is all included in the tables in the deck, that if you look at just within the surrounding immediate 2 blocks of this property, the average is 26. We then took it a step further and removed the 3 largest outliers, White Elephant, Jared Coffin House, and Nantucket Hotel, so the average isn't skewed, and the average drops to 16 rooms. So I'm definitely cognizant of the fact that safety in this neighborhood that's gone through a lot, not just the fire, but then the resulting construction in the past 2 years of not just rebuilding Veranda House, but the barn that went up and then home renovations. These neighbors have had a lot of commotion in the neighborhood, and I want to, earn their respect and be a good innkeeper going forward with a reasonably sized property, I think, in comparison to the other precedent on the island. So I'm sorry that wasn't most eloquently speaking, but I'm happy to answer any questions too.
Mr. Casey, I did have a question for you. Thank you. So I think it said in the materials that you're a graduate of the Cornell Hospitality. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay. And have you can you just tell us a little bit about your history running guest houses?
Yes. So I worked for a large hotel owner and operator, where I became one of the youngest partners of that firm in New York City. My CEO at that company is a Nantucket resident, and it was the one that introduced me to the island over a decade ago.
This is Starwood.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with the Nantucket. I left Starwood in 2023, August 2023, to pursue my own dream of actually opening a hotel. My role at that firm and big organizations is much different than on the ground running operations of a lodging establishment, and that's kind of part of the challenge that I like here. I have experience managing real estate. I have experience renovating and designing. This is fun. This has candidly been a dream. I had a great first summer. We were not profitable, but with proper renovations and tweaks, we definitely hope to be profitable. We were the cheapest hotel on Nantucket this summer, and that was intentional. We could have, I still don't think we would have been profitable this summer, but it was important to charge guests what I thought was fair for the product they were getting. This property is not renovated. The bathrooms were done in the 70s, and they have not been renovated since, with linoleum tile and plastic showers. There's some amazing historical details that exist within the guest rooms and the staircases that will all be retained. The bathrooms definitely, though, need upgrading in order to, compete with the big corporations that own the other hotels that these guests are considering. 74.6% of the guest rooms, of the 920 guest rooms on this island, are owned by 5 big firms, and there's very few kind of mom and pop operators still on island. So much so that I was really surprised when I stepped into this space. There's no lodging establishment or community board, organization, sorry, I was searching for the right word, anymore, because the big guys don't feel like they need it. And the demand here is so high that you don't really need the insight of your others. So I've had fun reaching out to a lot of the other hotel owners and operators, and we've gotten some great advice and some great insight on how to be a good hotel owner on island.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You thought you were helping when you bought this.
Sorry?
You thought you were helping us
He is
with
helping.
rooms.
He is helping.
Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
I just wanted to answer the question about inclusionary units. The definition in 139.2, inclusionary unit, any rental dwelling unit required pursuant to 139.11H, that's the MCD bylaw, restricted to employee occupancy. So I think the reason for the waiver is that any rental dwelling unit, a dwelling unit has to have a kitchen. So if you just have rooms, you don't have dwelling units. I would suggest another restriction in this permit, just to be clear. You want to be clear that those 4 basement rooms are for employees only, and that if 2 employees opt not to live at the property, that they don't suddenly become additional guest rooms. So if you understand what I'm saying, you want to make sure that your maximum guest rooms, if you approve the 16, is 16 with 4 employees, and that those employee units can't somehow morph into guest rooms.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else up there now?
One more hand just
Okay.
came back up.
All right.
James Freitas.
Okay, James, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just I want to make the point, I don't know that everyone knows, right? Starwood Hotel Group is one of the largest hotel companies in the world. They're a major hedge fund run by Barry Sternlicht. Who's all, I'm not saying anything about that firm, but it really has nothing to do with running a small guest house on Nantucket. Thank you.
No,
Okay.
no one's disputing that.
I'm not sure where that's coming from, but okay.
Well, I mean, I actually understand where it's coming from. I do.
Okay.
I think, can we deliberate amongst ourselves
Sure.
now? Should we close the
You wanna
public
close?
hearing?
Does everyone
Okay.
feel comfortable
Yeah.
closing?
Just one comment before you close the public hearing. If you're going to ask for any additional information from the applicant that hasn't already been discussed, then don't close the public hearing, because once it's closed, you can't ask
Yeah.
for new information.
Okay, why don't we wait then?
We can leave it open.
mean-
And is there any downside to leaving it open? No.
No, other than the public can
We
still
might get
comment.
interrupted. Yeah, but that's not a downside. So I think it's a relevant comment. Well, first, I just want to say, I certainly want to see guest houses persist. I mean, we have fewer guest houses, and the tradition of the guest house, a traditional guest house, has great value for our tourist economy. And I think we all appreciate that. And I think this board wants to encourage guest houses. And we have a challenge with that because of a number of factors that are not currently in anyone's control. But, and I also want to say, Mr. Casey, you're living at you're going to be living at so Mr. Casey is a neighbor in the neighborhood. And I think everybody should remember that. But I do want to say, I think the Mr. Freight's last comment is relevant because Mr. Casey is trying to do something very hard. He's done it for part of a season. He knows that he needs to make improvements. We heard him say it wasn't profitable, but he hopes it to be. And that, he needs to find his market segment. He needs to find how to position himself in the market. There's just a lot of work that needs to be done. So I'm having a difficult time with 2 factors. One is, I think it is hard, if we have to make a finding that adding the 6 guest rooms and having, them being really guest rooms, so the the cleaning staff and everyone supporting is living in the basement. I'm having a hard time deciding that that is not more detrimental to the neighborhood. I mean, I'm probably the only one on the planning board who lives in the old historic district, and I have a home right on the busy street. I'm probably the only person who knows what it's like when people come and sit on your doorstep to have conversations. And you know who they are, but you don't want them to know you live there. So I know, I know personally, there is having the additional volume of people in this guest house setting is detrimental. Another concern that I had was looking on the guest rooms on the website I know everything's changing and just starting up, but there is a room count, and with every room, it says what the occupancy of the room is. And so just with the 10 rooms, the occupancy for the guest house, not including the staff, was 29 people, because some of those rooms were listed for 6 people. So I don't think we can I'll let other people speak. I'm sorry to go on for so long, but I think it's just hard to find a finding that is more detrimental. And I also think there is great wisdom for us as a board in letting someone have a little bit of time to operate a brand new guest house before they expand it by 60%.
Well, but
those are my comments. Thank you.
the problem with that, I thought you were going to say something else. The problem with that is the code. You just don't walk in and buy an old house, because that's really an old house.
That's a question I had. So
it's like, that's what Joe was trying to
Joe
make a
was
point
saying
about.
this, and he made a statement, and I just wanted to check. I would assume that there would be a historic determination and that they didn't have, I know you said they're bringing a sprinkler, but
Yeah,
do
I'm
they have
talking
to bring
about that
everything
stuff,
up to
not-
code?
They don't have to make the house airtight. I'm talking about the other stuff, the sprinklers, alarm stuff, things like that.
Do they have a historic determination, or are they, no? So they have to make the hallways wide and the stairs they have to change and.
If he does the work, but if he doesn't do the work.
Mr. Casey?
We have an architect engaged, and no, we're keeping most of the historic elements. We're like the hallways don't need to be expanded for proper egress right now.
I'm
Is
still a
that the
little bit
question?
confused. It's actually not more, if Nat has the question, he can ask it. Thank you.
John, go ahead. Can you hear us?
You're muted, John.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to repeat everything we've heard, but I would like to just weigh in with one point of view. Mr. Casey has shown that he may not be a experienced guest house owner, but he's doing the right things, not talking about them. He's done it. He's completely sprinkleized, or whatever the word is, that building, not just the new piece, the whole thing. And actions speak a lot louder than words, and I think he's made an excellent start doing that, which was not an inexpensive venture, I'm sure. So I think so far what he's doing is beneficial to the neighborhood and not detrimental. I mean, I just can't see how you can argue that making at least one building down there a lot safer tomorrow than it was yesterday. So, yeah, that's my point. Thank you.
Agreed. You all set? Who else is up?
Dave Iverson.
Dave,
has the same.
go ahead, Dave.
You're muted, Dave.
I'm going to channel the acting chair here a little bit.
Channel.
I think people, and I heard loud and clear, everyone. Don't get me wrong. people need to understand the zoning they live in. They need to understand, or should make an effort to understand, our zoning on Nantucket. And this community has decided that they don't want hotels or guest houses anywhere but in the downtown commercial district or within a quarter mile of it. So I think when you're buying a house, and some people that stood up today actually live in the CDT and were complaining about commercial use, is that when you buy in the ROH, you need to, and you're within a quarter mile of the CDT, you should accept a certain level or a certain possibility that you could have a transient housing or a hotel or guest house near you. And I understand people's concern. I understand they're going to increase the room count by 60%, but they're not increasing the footprint by 60%. We're talking about 6 rooms here, in a structure where the owner and operator lives. I think the parking discussion, you have no parking now. With these 6 rooms, you'll still have no parking. We have waived parking on guest houses regularly for the 6 years I've served here. I think it's pretty well accepted that most people that stay in guest houses don't bring cars. I think you have a bigger problem with short-term rentals in your neighborhood bringing cars than you do for a guest house. So, I understand people's concerns and complaints, and I'm not minimizing them, but from my perspective, this is not a huge sea change for this neighborhood. And 6 rooms is not the end of this neighborhood. And to think that there's going to be continued expansion, I think that that's limited just based on the build out that already exists. People don't have the square foot to expand.
Yep.
So I think we just need, as a board, need to really, think about what we're doing here and make right choices surrounding that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Yes, Howard, go ahead.
I don't see the analogy between being a principal or an equity or working at Starwood and running this property, except for the expertise and the experiences that this guy has been able to glean from doing that. And I reiterate what John said. I think this gentleman has illustrated his sensitivity and his care for preserving the neighborhood and respecting the neighbors. And that has nothing to do with his experiences at Starwood. That has to do with the person and his ability to operate this facility and be sensitive to his neighbors, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Howard. Agreed. Do you want to have that conversation now, Hillary,
Which
a little bit?
conversation?
I don't know, the one we talked about before we closed the public hearing.
Oh,
I'm just.
I don't know what
think
conversation
we're kind of having
that
it
is.
anyway. But I can go back to mid-2000s and argue about the underground parking garages, never had a car in it, and how it held up that job. But I would say that Fort Chestnut was held up for about 8 years.
And it killed that tree too.
All right, whatever. I'm just, I forgot about the tree. I just talking about Sylvia Howard's one parking space that made it even harder. And there's never been a car. Not a single automobile has ever been in that parking garage. But they had to build that building to hold all that weight suspended over that area. That's just basically a lot of good storage, okay? And CDT, thank God we have CDT, because what happened at the Union Street Inn was criminal, shutting them down for any expansion because of that before we did it. I'm just telling
I
you.
wasn't asking for parking, yeah.
I didn't say you were. I'm talking now as somebody that has been around, and I've seen this come full circle insane. I thought we wanted rooms in town. We've lost a ton of rooms. And now there's a handful coming back into the fray, like dribs and drabs. What he's doing at that house, the Ross house, is, when's the next time that's gonna happen? 3 years from now somewhere? I mean, it's not gonna happen that much. Those properties are gonna be residential most likely most of the time when they turn over. There were rooming houses on Easton Street that are residential houses now. So you'd have to go through a litany of flip-flopping on all sorts of different properties to figure out what was, what wasn't, what is it now, how it got there. It's an exercise in futility, and it doesn't gain any real solid information to warrant all of this individual concerns about one location, okay? Fire, okay, you know what? At least we have public water everywhere. But I mean, we're lucky to have it. We're lucky to have what we have, how they responded to that. I mean, if we're worried about a fire on every small street in town, and we want to remove parking so fire trucks can drive down these streets easily, that's a huge conversation to have, because that's what Malcolm's talking about. It's what's happening on Summer Street a little bit. I could talk that for hours about, wow, how far are we gonna take this? So, I mean, Gardner Street would be one way then. India Street will not have any parking. I mean, if we go down that road, okay? So I am not concerned about this application in that way. What I am concerned with is the understanding of what can happen to properties that are owned by one person back in the day when they do have more than one lot that can become individually owned by somebody else and become something different by right. And we can't take away their rights because people used to park in the back of Cyril Ross's front house. I don't know how else to word it. And I'm sorry that that's just the way things are. But I mean, if this gentleman bought all 3 properties and left the back a parking lot and did the front and added 4 rooms or 8 rooms or whatever he's doing, what would we be saying then? You see what I mean? Like, I don't know what the answer is to that.
Well, I think we have to follow our own rules,
Right.
right?
No, I agree. I'm just making that point a different way.
So the gentleman bought a 10-room, a house that had for a very long time been used as a 10-room rooming house.
Yep.
And it has 11 rooms, and the owner lived in the 11th room and rented 10 rooms. And so now, last year, they had 11 rooms. Well, he was living there too. But anyway, I have a question for our staff about the finding that it is not more detrimental to the neighborhood. Now, because what I'm hearing from the board is the benefits for the overall economy and I guess philosophically outweigh the detriment, or maybe I'm hearing that people just don't think there's really any more detriment at all to the coming and going of the people occupying this, and
I
and they
didn't
don't.
say anything about the
So,
economy.
but can the staff comment on this finding? And what our obligation is to the neighbors, because we have obligations to the island, to the owner, and to the neighborhood.
The unanswerable question.
Yeah, I mean, the zoning bylaw allows the planning board to issue a special permit for rooming, lodging, and guest houses within a quarter-mile radius of the residential old historic district.
Which we have done.
Which you've done. And the planning board has, for special permit applications for hotels, inns, guest houses, that type of use, put in conditions to, mitigate parking impacts that may, be negative on the surrounding area. You've included conditions about language on their website, language on promotional materials. You've included language about providing NRTA passes. I mean, that was a time when riding the bus was not free like it is now. There've been all sorts of conditions that the board has included to try to balance I think the need for preserving rooms for people to stay in when they come here, and, the negative impacts that it could cause on the area.
But, so they're asking to extend the MCD to include additional rooms. And staff is asking us to make a finding that the addition of the 6 rooms plus the additional staffing is not more detrimental to the neighborhood.
I think personally that the board could easily make that finding. I mean, this is an area that has traditionally had rooming, lodging, and guest houses. You have the Periwinkle is right there, the Veranda House, the Chapman House, the Ross's old place that was right next door. You have NIR, the old Harbor House.
Have any of the
There's
guest
lots of
houses
them.
gone away? Does anybody know? Are there guest houses along that? I know many guest houses have gone away, like the Centerboard. Have there been guest houses that have gone away?
On this street?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have that in my head. I don't think so, though. Periwinkle's still the Periwinkle, right?
I'm not sure how we could even research how guest houses.
I know that Dr. Butterworth knows
Dr.
this.
Butterworth knows.
Disappeared, and temporarily 15 and 17, which are both guest houses, have disappeared for a while. 17 is coming back. 15 certainly doesn't look like it's coming back.
Yeah.
So there have been a decrease.
Which one was the Johnson house? What one? Which one was the Johnson house?
The Johnson was Hussey.
The Hussey house, okay.
I do think it's relevant to think in aggregate, if we add guest rooms here, we should also think about where they've disappeared.
Well,
And
that's what,
if there have
that's
been guest
what
rooms.
he was saying earlier, is we've lost, I mean, the Quaker house is not what it was.
Captain's quarters.
Captain's Corners. Okay, so I forgot about
That's
that.
up on
That's
Center
next to the
Street, right?
Nantucket Hotel.
Next to the Nantucket Hotel, 10
Yeah.
rooms.
Yeah.
gone.
And again, they come and go, like restaurants. India House, it's gone, that's a house now. I mean, they come and go, and some get, when a restaurant, just like a rooming house, gets sold, they can't just keep the same number of seats if there's more space, like the Brotherhood, because you can't make any money with today's value. And you take a look at the Graydon House and how that went from a residential sort of piece of property with sort of abandoned kind of Dexter's Shell Shop thing and a building in the back. That building got moved to the front. That looks like it's been there for 150 years. You know what I mean? But that added a lot of rooms that in a restaurant that were not there, but they've been lost in other places. So it really just comes and goes.
Mr. Chairman.
Dave, other people have
ahead.
their hands up.
So, the other thing that everyone has to remember, this is a MCD permit. Like, if there's an issue, they can come back. So that is something that everyone needs to be mindful in the neighborhood. If like there is an issue, then they can always come back to us. The other part of it everyone's got to remember is like, are you going to restrict this? Well, what's to say we should be turning around and say, all right, no residential restriction, no residential renovations or additions or alterations within this neighborhood. It's kind of like we're trying to find a balance, but what's good for these guys has to be the same for the neighborhood. They have to be of the same thing of not allowing renovations, putting in sprinkler systems. I think there's some of these things that people need to also be aware of, is that I think that the amount of rooms being added is going to add very little impact, if any impact, to this neighborhood. The other part to Nat, what you always say is it's this type of bed and breakfast is going to bring the luggage wheelie brigade, right? They're all going to be walking off the boats with their luggage towed behind them. We have more taxis and Ubers on Nantucket, so they'll be using those to get everywhere. Talking to my neighbor, he says he's right out straight, still even today. So there's a lot of this business that has been going on that people don't need to bring their cars in Nantucket. So I think a lot of this impacts are not going to really show up at all. I think if anything, it's going to show up in the restaurants. It's going to show in, sales in town. That is, I think, is going to happen. That's not a bad thing. I think that's going to happen as a positive. No different than an SDR, which I think an SDR my friends that come, they bring a car. So I think that this, as we say, we are missing a lot of bed and breakfast, which is, classic to Nantucket and what the history that we always had. And I think this is something we should be protecting, preserving. And I agree with the Starwood. I think if this gentleman has gone to college and has a degree in this and working in the industry, that's the type of people we want. We want a plan that has come in, that ownership plan and the management plan, and someone's cell phone number on a hotline, so if something happens, we can reach out to them immediately. And I think these are all provisions we put into place, and I think these are all positive. So it's not like we're just gonna like cut them loose and away they go. I think these are all guardrails that we've looked into and protected. And I think it's something we really need to, let the public know and the neighborhood. This is something that is really important that we've managed well, and I think we've done better at it every time and every application's come through. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Joe.
Dave has his hand up.
Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I just to follow up with Joe, I think in conditions, we should add an updated management plan to reflect the rooms and the staff that's living there. And I would also like to see us set a date for them to return.
Yeah, the
at end of
yearly
the
thing.
year and hear how things have gone. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have one question about that for the board members. Is there any interest in discussing an occupancy limit? And was anyone else concerned? I mean, if it were a short-term rental, there would be a limit of 2 people per bedroom. Do we have any interest in adding some kind of limit on occupancy to the MCD?
I think that's a slippery slope. And these buildings are, they're sprinkled, they're this, they're that. I mean, that would be impossible to manage.
Well, no, it's easier than an STR because there's a published, it's published and it's part of that, the Board of Health that was actually inspecting this. This property actually gets inspected by the Board of Health. It gets a business license. And I don't know if anybody else looked at the room list, but it really does say, you can have 6 people in this room, you can have 4 people in this room. And these are really tiny rooms, very tiny rooms.
Let's let the gentleman.
Yeah.
The 6-person room is actually 2 rooms that are adjacent to each other. So we call that our Sawyer Suite, family suite for the summer.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
But that's 2 separate rooms. And I think there's 4 rooms that this summer where we had either a king or a queen and then a day bed, which appeals to a family with a child. So there were at least 4 rooms that could sleep 3 people. So if you combine 2 of those 3, that's how we got to the 6.
Thank you for that explanation.
Matt, if I could.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
And I appreciate where Hillary's going on this, but I think that would be an overstep for us. I think that's a health department, building department, fire department issue, not our issue.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to point out, I mean, Ms. Rayport was talking about substantially more detrimental, and I was sort of going along with that, not really thinking it through. I think there's a typo in the staff report that has led to us going down that track.
You mean in addition to the condition about the proposed garage?
It's in the first finding. Right now, the use is pre-existing non-conforming, so you would, maybe talk about substantially more detrimental, but they're proposing to change it to a use allowed by special permit, so that finding doesn't apply anymore once it changes to a special permit use.
Okay, go ahead,
Yeah,
Sarah.
I just wanted to mention the substantially more detrimental standard is if you're expanding or changing a pre-existing non-conforming use, and we're not. This is a use allowed by special permit, so we're under 13930.
I see.
And the standard under 13930 is the special permit granting authority shall issue special permits for structures and uses which are in harmony with the general purpose and intent of this chapter, subject to the provisions of such chapter. Such permits may impose conditions, safeguards, and limitations intended to ensure that the use or structure is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of this chapter.
Thank you. I think that does make a big difference.
It does.
Thank you. Okay, is anyone else on?
Mr. McNabb has his.
Okay. Oh, that's right. He was, no, this is number 3. Is it number 3? Is it his third time? Okay. Malcolm, go ahead. Is he on? I'm not turning my head around because my neck,
Yes,
the
he has
neck is
his hand
bothering me
up.
enough, so it's fine. So, whatever.
He has his hand up.
Malcolm, go ahead. Your
Yes,
hand is up.
I appreciate that you're all here so late.
No,
just want
we
to
love it. This
repeat-
is our favorite thing.
Listen, great. I think it's great that we have these kinds of rooms. I'd rather have this than the short-term rental down the street. When I bought this property in 2007, I knew there was going to be inns. I kind of have a second agenda here. I just want you all to understand that we have a problem on this island of parking and cars, and it's not on your agenda tonight, but it's something you as a board and the board that I need to really address, because that is a real problem. Thank you.
Yeah. Malcolm, I can't wait to talk to you about this, but I don't know if you'll be able to stand it.
I hope everybody comes to the forum on Thursday morning at the
Crazy.
Nantucket Inn to talk about parking and the NP and EDC.
Oh my God. Okay. I'm trying, Joe.
All right, so I just want to clarify that this change of it being in harmony, and there have been a couple of things that have said in the deliberation. I really want to thank my board members and the public for all the time and the exploration. I think the idea that it's not a non-conforming use, so we don't need to say that it's not more detrimental to the neighborhood, is a material difference. I also think the fact that while this house proposes to expand, there have been many others that have gone away is also a material question, a fact. I continue to have concerns that this is a first venture of someone who brings tremendous skills and experience, but is doing something for the first time. And there's already a lot of improvement that has to happen for next summer. We probably are updating bathrooms and things. So I'm just wondering if we really do need to permit full expansion right at this meeting, because even though we can go back and change the MCD, if they build the building, I mean, we want this owner to be successful. We want them to expand at a practical rate. I know they probably don't want to hear our advice about what's practical for them in that effort, but I guess I'll go with my board members on this one. Thank you for listening to me.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
I think we're bored. We're starting to deliberate. Can we close the public comment?
Yeah, that's what I was saying before, but.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Second by Joe. All those in favor, Dave?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
John? Is he still
Muted.
around?
Johnny muted.
Aye.
Hillary?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you. Okay, continue if you want.
I'm
to.
finished with
Are we
what I have
done?
to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So Howard, you want to say anything? You've been, you're here physically. I feel like, I gotta
Yes,
look
I
at you
only
a little
wanted to
bit.
say that you feel like he has no experience. I really would challenge that. I think you might want to talk to him directly and get a better sense about what he can and can't do. I don't think it's practical for the concept, for the scheme that he's trying to execute, to do this in 2 phases at all. You might want to talk to him about that as well. I think you're dealing with a player here who knows when he doesn't know the answer and knows what to do about it.
Yeah.
And I encourage you to explore that, Hillary, a little bit further with him directly.
Well, I think we're going to make a vote tonight, Howard, so.
Yeah, but I know what
look
he's
forward to
talking
getting
about.
to know him in the community.
When you have like somebody new in the same place, I have to bring up the Brotherhood because that's the best one to bring up. It's still the same place that was already there, but all of a sudden there's a massive, well, what do we, like it never existed. When you have something brand new, fresh, I can see concerns and different things depending upon what it is. But like, we have to allow for the natural ebb and flow of properties, especially in town. In town is so different. There were gigantic hotels. We all have the pictures. We hear about them. They get sent around on the internet here and there. Huge, massive, gigantic buildings. They're all gone, okay? Seacliff Inn, 73, I think it was 73, 72. But it's just, so you're gonna have these little dribs and drabs rebuilding jobs. I mean, I think this is the biggest nothing we've talked about in a while, and yet it's turned into a nightmare. And I feel bad for the guy because he doesn't know all this stuff. And we're kind of like taking the last 20 years and sort of pounding that into this one application. It's like, wow, where's the Union Street Inns edition that they were gonna do? Gone, because we didn't have CDT. We didn't have the 200 or whatever the feet. What is the rule? How many feet? How many miles?
Quarter of a mile.
Quarter of a mile. We didn't have that at that time to be able to do that for them. So anyway, I'm ready to take a vote. If anyone wants to make a motion or anyone want to have some more comment before,
I think you need to close the public hearing.
we already did.
Oh, you did that.
We did. I know, Leslie, I kind of got confused myself about that, honestly.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have to add, what are the conditions, Dave?
I would like to add, and then if anyone else would like to add anything, please speak
Yeah.
now. But I'd like to add an updated management plan to
Yeah.
include the extra rooms and to include the employees that are going to live there.
Nope.
And I'd like to set a date for them to return before the board to talk about how things are going.
And no construction during the summer months.
Yes, June 15th.
Okay, so 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
4 is the management plan, 5 is that, we have to pick a date, Dave, because we don't know when starting is, like from a year from, it's usually in the fall, right?
Oh.
We do that?
Yeah, well,
Leslie,
so
myself,
when well, let's do it after his construction's done. When does he
Yeah.
think when do you think the new units will be ready for occupancy?
Can we just make a suggestion real quick that you do it maybe a year after the CO is issued?
Okay, that sounds like a good
All
plan.
right, there you go.
Yeah.
And then,
But to the public, Nat, that if there is an issue between that 1 year, they can come back.
I can open it. Yeah,
Correct.
that needs to be explained, and
Correct.
Joe's already said that tonight.
What?
On an MCD.
Because we do hear your
can open a
concerns.
public hearing anytime if there's something
right.
wrong. Like
Yep.
it's like there's a lot of authority with the MCD. And then 6 was what was it?
Building.
All the time, summer.
Yeah.
Yep.
So depending upon how you do, I forgot your name, sorry. So we have to, we can require you to not have outside construction in the summer. There isn't a technical date, but people think there is because of some of the previous projects that we had that were big. So it's usually June 15th to something, depending. So it's core of the summer. That will have to be decided by staff, in my opinion, because we have no idea what your position's gonna be. So if you want to write that up to where interior construction only, but we don't know.
So we would suggest June 30th to October 15th for exterior construction, if everyone's good with that?
September,
September
not
15th.
October.
Okay.
Yeah,
June
yeah.
30th to September 15th.
Yeah, for exterior. And then there are times that we've extended it because it's like you're right there and you got like another week worth of work or something like that, or there's staging involved, or there's some other large issue that would stall the whole summer. That is open for whatever.
So we'll
Done
add,
that numerous times.
minor changes can be evaluated by staff
Yeah.
without requiring a
Yep,
public hearing.
yep. Okay?
And so we are saying that, are we requiring that employees live on site, or are we saying just the rooms have to be available?
I think I have the basement rooms are for the use of employees only is what.
Like the
my
Martin
notes
House.
have.
But
Mountains is like
I
that.
think we need to make sure that as part of the expectation is not just that the rooms will be occupied. You know, I don't want it to be like, oh, well, the rooms are there, but they chose not to be there. I just want to be clear, if we're saying that we're having 4 people live there, that the 4 people will live there, or I'd like the applicant to clarify. That's not what he's.
Definitely think they'll be occupied.
I mean, that should be reflected in their management plan.
Summer.
Well,
Correct?
2 were there, and he said, and we expected 3, so.
all right.
Hillary, I think that'll be reflected in the management plan.
I'm
Yeah,
just
that's-
asking if it
She
says
wants-
it, because it
yeah.
says that the housing is there, but it's a question. Is
Oh,
it
okay.
clear that people are going to be on site? Because I don't want to come back and turns out that only one person was there.
Could the cleaners live off-site? Because if I use the same cleaners that were great this summer and they declined housing, you at least still have innkeeper, assistant innkeeper management there, but cleaners.
No, she's talking about any employee, I believe.
I just want to know what
right?
is in the MCD and to have it be clear. So the MCD, it sounds like, is being requested that 2 people live on site and that housing for 4 people be provided. Is that what we're saying? Right, but that's a maybe, but we're saying at a minimum, it will be 2. Yes. Is that okay? That's okay. At a minimum, 2 people will be living on site and housing for 4 will be provided, is what we're talking about.
Okay. You guys got that sort of, how to word it?
Is that okay, Megan? And, yeah.
Okay. All right. So those conditions added to the existing 3, right? Okay. Dave's motion.
I'll second.
Approve with the new conditions added to the existing findings
Yeah.
and conditions.
I
Okay.
have a report in front of me, a staff report that says condition 1 mentions a garage, so.
I switched it online to say construction. I will hopefully never have a typo again.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you. You're forgiven. And then, of course, we are changing the finding that it's in harmony.
Yeah, the language of that, of number 3.
Number 1.
I mean.
Number 1.
Oh, it's number 1. Okay,
Finding
sorry.
number 1.
All right. Oh, okay, I see what you're doing.
At the size, kid.
No, I wasn't signing. That was just regular breathing, Joe. I'm still allowed to do that, I think. I hope. Just regular breathing. Okay, with that, so are we clear now? We're all good? Okay, so is there a second?
Yes,
To Dave's
second,
motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Seconded by Joe. All those in favor, Dave?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Hillary?
Aye.
And the chair, non-signed chair votes aye. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. My memory is pretty good with the old stuff, Sarah, but the new stuff.
We're working on the new stuff.
The new stuff slips a little. Okay.
So other business. If it's okay, I'll work my way backwards because it's simple to more complex. So you have on the agenda in the staff report, the schedule of special and regular meetings for the next 6 weeks or so. We have some special meetings plugged in to review warrant articles. Hopefully, we don't need all of them, but we will most definitely need January 5th. So you're required to hold a public hearing to address the citizen warrant articles within 60 days of transmission to the board. So that's the intent of this meeting. We'll also probably throw on a couple of planning board sponsored articles as well that are already in good shape for your review. Also included in the packet was the 2026 planning board meeting schedule. That's more of an FYI, just so you know what meeting dates are going to be coming for regular meetings. And then we wanted to discuss at least 2 concept articles and then address any others if you have questions. So the first thing was, I just wanted to mention and get general feedback. I sent an email last night suggesting you go back and look at the inclusionary housing bylaw that was adopted at annual town meeting this past spring. What that bylaw does is it gives prescribed parameters on placing year-round deed restrictions when there's development under special permit. So I believe it applied to any subdivision that requires special permit, so separate from AR. So that would be your rear lots, your open space, your flex development. It also applies on unit creation for apartment buildings and apartments, and all of these are in excess of 5. This hasn't been adopted by the Attorney General yet. Hopefully we'll hear something by the end of the week. It was actually extended for 90 days. We should be getting a response by December 10th. So the thought there is there's been a lot of discussion amongst the board about placing year-round deed restrictions on rear lot subdivisions has been a topic of conversation that you all have brought up very frequently the past couple of months. So it's my opinion and the opinion of town council that really needs to be clear in the zoning bylaw. And I think the best way to address that would be to modify this section that is soon to be included in E code. So whether that be shall at 5 units and may at less, I mean, that's kind of up to you, but I wanted to get general feedback if that's what you're thinking, and if so, I can propose some changes to that bylaw. Looks like Dave has his hand up.
Dave, go ahead.
I strongly encourage Nat's board to
Which one?
this one to support creating some flexibility in here and giving us the ability to restrict at less than 5 for year round.
So, how much do you want to get into this? I don't want to like go on about this too much, but because we don't have the ability to technically do it legally, right? Just voluntarily, right?
It's a little bit of a gray area, and it would be a lot less gray if it was defined in
If
the
we,
zoning bylaw.
so if we, this is one of the things that we had that earlier application on Folger, which I'm so excited about, 19. But he's not getting anything for this.
Well, those are covenant.
No, hold on. He's not getting anything for doing this. We need people to do that, and there's no incentive to do it, okay?
He's getting to create another lot, right?
No, it's the lot's still the same. These are separated lots, but it's still the same lot, okay? So when we get the ground cover thing fixed, hopefully, when we have more tools in the toolbox that will incentivize people for restricting to year-round ownership. I'm not talking about the covenant, but the covenant is thrown into this mix depending upon what that owner is doing with the property. Then we'll have a better ability to require something. When you require something that doesn't really have a benefit other than just doing it, I understand the special permit part. I am in favor of that in the real lot, because there is a lot of, the applicant is getting more out of that than they are with any other subdivision. However, if it's vacant land, that's not the same thing as an existing home. The existing property that's built already is the one that needs to be targeted for at least some kind of year-round restriction. If that comes to fruition, we start doing that. It also depends on where it is. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but it depends on the location. I mean, obviously, it just does.
I'm just so.
I think what we need to know tonight is, do you want to have us craft some language to add a year-round restriction for rear lot subdivisions in the zoning bylaw? Because if you all want to continue to talk about that as a possible restriction, during applications, then it needs to be in the bylaw so people have a reasonable
All right.
expectation
I-
of what they're
I
planning.
think we should, but it
to
has
do.
to be written in a way that's not like super binding, because there are other things that have to happen to make it more palatable that we haven't done.
Well, we'll brainstorm and
I mean-
present some
I mean-
ideas and we can,
We have to get that ground cover thing fixed, or else it's kind of a waste of time to talk about some of this stuff. If we don't give some kind of a bonus that's, doesn't cost us anything, but at the same time gives an incentive to do it, especially with existing dwellings. And you saw that tonight. You guys squeezing these things to work with existing buildings, but there's like no room for expansion at all.
But what they're gonna come back with, just so I understand, that is, you're gonna come back, we're talking a lot about granting additional intensity and development in exchange for restrictions for year-round
You're
occupancy.
talking like
And that-
500
that
square
they're-
feet, like little amounts. It's not a lot. It's just, it
Well,
depends on
sometimes
where it
it's a
is.
whole, sometimes it's a whole new lot
It-
that we'll give.
yeah,
No,
and I
well,
think
depending
that,
upon what's already built.
no, I think Hillary's exactly correct. So right now, it's very clear that you're only allowed to require the year-round restriction when I believe it's when you're developing 5 units or 5 lots
Yeah.
through the avenue of
Which
special
is
permit. And I think,
unusual.
what I'm hearing is the general consensus that there really ought to be maybe some more flexibility, because 1 per 5 may be great in one location, but not another.
Like, for example, what we just saw on
Knobsco.
Knobsco, thank you.
You talk about number 9, Oscar Way, which one are you
No.
talking about?
Yeah,
The
9.
one,
Yeah.
the one that did the rear lot, they were looking.
The one that has the house in the
Donna
wrong
L.
spot.
Yes.
Yep, that we need to preserve our house at the same time. I got it.
Okay, so Leslie and I can work on that.
Yeah.
So let's dive into ADUs a little bit. We've been talking about this for quite some time. We really need to get this integrated into our local zoning bylaw. So I circulated some proposed language. It's not just a single article. There's multiple things in our zoning bylaw that need to be addressed in order to accommodate protected use ADU. So I guess I'll go through what's before you, what questions I have, and then maybe if it's okay with you, we can go from there.
Yeah.
That's all right?
Yeah, sounds
Okay.
great.
So the first thing I'm suggesting is that we remove our current language for accessory dwelling unit. Our current language really is to accommodate an in-law type of apartment. This can certainly be constructed using the protected use accessory dwelling unit, and if you're in a commercial district, you can pursue an apartment path. So it becomes obsolete and really just adds confusion. So I think what's best is to just strike that definition entirely.
Totally agree.
Agree.
So next is to move forward and clarify the definition of protected use accessory dwelling unit. So I've lifted language from the state, kind of melded it together with language of what an accessory dwelling unit is, since we, in theory, already have that through secondary dwelling, and came up with the definition of protected use ADU. What we need to know is, and let me backtrack just a little bit. I've gone to multiple sessions about this with EOHLC. The Attorney General's office has been involved with one of those. Leslie has, as well as has Hillary. And I think most of you were at the roadshow that EOHLC presented through the NP and EDC. So EOHLC has guidance on certain things and certain interpretations. Ultimately, it's up for the Attorney General to approve those. So there's still a lack of clarity in some sense that EOHLC believes it should take a certain path, but that hasn't been codified through the Attorney General's office yet. We can submit any of these proposed changes to the Attorney General's office for a pre-approval, if you will. So once we have the final draft and perhaps before the public hearing, I think that would be a good time to do that. keep in mind, our town council has advised us that in other communities that have received pre-approval from the Attorney General's office, a different attorney reviews it and then denies it. So it's not totally foul-proof, so just keep that in mind. So that said, the protected use ADU allows up to 900 square feet or half the size of the principal dwelling, whichever is smaller. So do we want to include language about increasing that minimum, perhaps altering it for zoning districts, and allowing an increase by special permit is something I think we need explicit clarification on through the Attorney General's office?
So,
No.
well,
Go
I
ahead.
just think before we can, I think the answer is probably yes. I have one comment on the definition, which is, I'm not sure why we wouldn't just take the definition that is in their model zoning, which includes things like the gross floor area, there's some technical stuff. It includes that an ADU that is non-conforming to zoning shall still qualify as a protected use ADU. There's just stuff, some technical stuff. Is there? Okay. I think as much as possible, if we use their model zoning, I think we'll be better off.
You mean the MAPC's model zoning?
Yes.
Okay, I can take another look at that. I
Yeah.
lifted this right from the regulations, not from the
Right,
model zoning.
from the model
Yeah.
zoning. So, but then to get to the meat of the issue, which is how big should our protected use ADU by right ADU be? I have some kind of mind-bending, like we're all too tired to think about this scenarios that I went through. Can I, oh, Joe has his hand up.
No, go ahead, keep going.
Okay, all right. So here's the issue. The issue is every place where there is a single-family dwelling unit allowed, permissible, okay? It doesn't have to be a primary use. If it's permissible, it also gets an ADU by right without coming before the board. So I think my proposed goal for this board, since we already do all of the things the state is trying to get us to do with
Thank
this
you.
law, is to
More than
bring
the state
our
wants.
zoning, into compliance with the state law, clarify for our building commissioner and the public what is going to be able to get a permit by right, but also protect our zoning so that we're not unintentionally handing out additional dwelling units that we didn't really want to hand out or didn't foresee.
That's why we got rid of the tertiary for 10
Right, that's why
minutes.
we got rid of the tertiary. However, it did not solve the problem and it's only temporary. So here are the scenarios. So scenario A, a lot has a primary dwelling already. This is what's already there. Let's imagine. The lot has the primary dwelling, it already has a secondary dwelling, and it already has a garage apartment. It has a right to have a tertiary dwelling. Okay, let's just say it does.
So you're plugging the tertiary as an ADU right now?
No, I'm just saying, forget the ADUs. Right now, we could have a situation, could we not, where we have a
No,
lot.
the garage apartment would be the tertiary.
Okay, so it doesn't have the tertiary. Okay, so let's say it's fully built out with a primary, a secondary, and it has a garage apartment. What we do not want is for this lot to come to our building commissioner and say, please give me an ADU. I have the ground cover, I have the setbacks, give me the ADU.
Yeah.
So we want whichever unit is dimensionally equivalent to our protected use ADU as defined to be identified as such so that this person does not get another dwelling. And it's probably going to be the garage apartment, but it could also be another building. So that's scenario A. So just bear with me. Scenario A is fully built out lot. We want when we're finished, we want it to be very clear that one of those buildings is the protected use ADU. But now let's say there's scenario B. Let's say there's a lot that has a primary dwelling and a secondary dwelling. They say, I want to put in an ADU. let's say the secondary dwelling is 1,000 square feet. Let's say it's in town, okay, where they don't have the right, they don't have the right to a tertiary in town. Then we have a situation where we want to make the ADU permissible enough that we could name the secondary dwelling to be the ADU. Because otherwise, we end up with an additional dwelling.
You mean a fourth? You mean
Well, in
like
this
the
case, it would be a
additional meaning
third.
like we don't
In
we
this
don't have
case-
that ability now, and that's the right track to
Yes.
go down. 4 dwellings on a lot
Right.
is not what Nantucket
Well,
thinks is allowed right now.
the scenario was that the lot has a primary dwelling and it already has a secondary dwelling. And it wants an ADU. So let's say it's a lot where they have the right to have a garage apartment.
Everybody does. But-
Even in town, they have
Well,
the right.
I don't know if ROH does, but I think,
Yeah, if it's the second dwelling.
yeah,
So, right,
which is a rare, like almost unheard of potential now, but yes.
we have to have the flexibility that if we, like, okay, so let's say this lot with a primary and a secondary has a right to have a tertiary. And they say we want an ADU. Then we would prefer, if we can, to be able to say to them, your secondary is your protected use ADU, and you can have a tertiary because our tertiary has restrictions. Do you see what I'm saying? So the reason why I'm running through all of this is because the size of the ADU, of our protected use ADU, is it's very important that we encapsulate as many of the secondaries as possible. We can make it bigger. We can make our protected use ADU bigger. We just can't make it so big that it's not even in the ballpark of what the state had in mind.
Well, you got height to make up the difference as far as bedrooms and size that way.
But
We already
it's actually a
increased.
gross. Yeah.
No, I understand, but it is?
It's
Gross
their
gross.
So it's not going by
definition,
ground cover,
and
the
it
state one? Okay, never
also
mind.
includes unfinished space. So if it's a crawl space, it doesn't count. But we have tertiaries right now
In basements.
that are bigger than the protected use ADU, because in our tertiary, it's 900 square feet of
900.
livable space,
Yeah.
whereas the state's ADU is
Yeah,
all
that's true.
space.
So I have that on here too, on the list, because I need to marry the state's definition with ours. Ours can be more permissive. I just want to make sure there's no components of theirs that is more permissive, because then we have to accept that. So I'll be working with the building commissioner on language for that, but that does need to be updated as well. And then,
We should also update probably our gross floor area definition, because it
Yeah.
only applies to like a couple of things.
yep, that's what I have here.
Okay.
Yep. And then that also leads into the article about the use chart, kind of your suggestions, Hillary, about how the second dwelling is applied. So what I've suggested isn't exactly what you've said, but it kind of gets to that point where in the R1, SR1, ROH, SOH, so on and so forth, where a tertiary dwelling currently isn't allowed, if we're gonna keep the allowance of a secondary dwelling, perhaps that ought to be through special permit. And then in R5 limited and R10 limited, where tertiary dwellings
agree
are
with that.
prohibited and
That's-
second dwellings are by special permit, they just go
Yeah.
away. You don't get a second dwelling in those districts anymore. You can go right to protected use ADU.
That cleans up, it doesn't really change it that much, but it kind of cleans them up at the same time, the R10 and the R5 limited.
Yep.
That makes a lot of sense, which is another reason to make it like a size that we think makes sense.
And it also prevents what just happened over across from the airport.
Yeah, no your way.
Yeah, but,
Okay, so.
okay, just
yeah.
go ahead, never
No,
mind.
that's okay. So
Joe
it sounds
has
like
his
I'll
hand
lift,
up, too.
we're all on board with removing our current ADU language.
What I'm concerned with this is the confusion factor.
Well, we're gonna have
So,
to
you
talk
know,
about it multiple
I'm
times.
talking about a town meeting, this is something that is really not fully understood yet.
Yeah, I think as a
And
planning board, you're gonna have to have
we
a lot of
have to-
conversations with people about it.
If we didn't have, let's say, for example, we didn't have this ADU right now at all. And that we were trying to find a way to have a fourth kitchen that's acceptable to the voters. Right? We've had this conversation before this started, okay? And this kind of screwed it all up. What would be, and that made me think of it, Hillary, when you mentioned the garage apartment. Garage apartment or a basement apartment for the quote-unquote fourth kitchen, in my eyes, is what's acceptable here to most people. But a fourth actual dwelling, house, is what my concern was, and that's why, I know that's why we got rid of the tertiary, but what you're trying to do, Megan, is bring back, we have to come up with some kind of final definition of what we're gonna end up with. Right?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
as a part of this proposal, and, you know, this is subject, to obviously, all your feedback and going through the hearings, is to remove tertiary dwelling out of our zoning bylaw.
Except a covenant.
Yeah. So tertiary lots and tertiary dwellings are not the same thing at all.
That's
You
good
can
that we
still
were able to do
proceed with
that.
the tertiary lot, even if
And you
we,
still get an ADU on it.
yeah, even if we get
But
rid of
that's, did you hear
I'm
about
sorry?
that? Yeah.
Could you be grandfathered and keep the tertiary lot, right?
anyone can still
We can
pursue a
still-
tertiary
they're
lot,
keeping
just the
that,
way, the
Howard.
language is drafted.
Oh,
The
No, I'm
tertiary
no,
getting
the
rid of
regular
a tertiary
tertiary.
dwelling.
Just a freestanding tertiary that's part of the lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where the ADU replaces that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think that's good. The confusion factor, though, we have to figure out a way to explain this without confusion. This is
We're gonna
extremely
ask Megan to
confusing.
explain it. That's how we're
I
gonna get it
certainly
explained
can't, I
without
can tell you that.
confusion.
I think
I
we're
understand it
gonna,
mostly, but it is not that easy to explain this.
no, and I think we're gonna have to maybe work with the communications office on
Well,
some sort of outreach plan and how to simplify something that's very complex.
I think I actually, maybe I'm overly optimistic, but I think when we actually figure it out, it is going to make sense, because our zoning code is already so damn complex that anyone who can understand what we already have, this will make sense.
But our zoning has not, we've had second dwelling since what, 78, 81? It's a long time. So second dwelling is like your second car to people here. They don't think that there's ever gonna be an issue with that. But once you get into this confusion about tertiary versus covenant tertiary versus ADU, and I don't know about the 900 square feet. I think we have to figure out that floor area versus the regular ground cover, because that is a big difference. And a
Yeah.
lot of people are putting a two-story tertiary is probably coming as normal down the road. Because nobody's gonna build a small little tiny house with one floor with all the expense it costs to build.
Yeah, no.
You know what I mean? It's not free to build a house here anymore, so.
We have Dave and Joe
Dave,
with
Joe,
their-
sorry.
Joe had
I don't
his
have,
hand
I'm
up.
not turning my head, sorry.
Dave, go.
Joe, you go.
Thanks, Dave. I think this definitely should be a special permit. The other part of this is Hillary's, the way she spelled it out, is if you have a main house and a second dwelling, and then if there's a garage apartment and turn a tertiary. I think that gross 900 square foot is plenty. I think that we don't want something that's massive. I mean, I guess if we look at zoning, it was lug 3. If that's someone we could look at, maybe that's a little bit bigger, but I think the 900 square feet and a year-round housing would be the really best vehicle for us. And the other part of that is, I think your question was prohibit STRs, absolutely. But the only other thing is in the 900 square foot, if there was an existing third structure that was larger, then I could see us looking at it through special permit. Does that work, and is it acceptable? I mean, I think for 900 square feet, you're going to get enough for, 2 bedrooms and a comfortable living space. So I really think that's wise. But I think if we got into, I think there was one that came up was 1,200 square foot existing structure, and going to be turned into a ADU. I think that really needs to be looked at and managed properly. And to Hillary's point, even open space or unfinished space kind of falls into that square footage. So the one thing that's going to eliminate is a full basement. You're going to have, unless someone wants to do that, either then go up and down. But to Nat's point, if they go up, then that house is going to get a crawl space, and a crawl space is something under 6'6" high, because that makes it non-habitable. And so that's where I think we just really need to kind of manage this and look at it from all angles. But I think we're on the right course. I think the ADUs that came from the state is far too broad, wide open. We need to abide by our zoning setbacks, square foot, ground cover, all that thing needs to really be in play. I think that's really important, and how we kind of grab back some of this article that came forward that was just basically handed to us and said, you got to play with this and work with it. And I just think that's wrong. So that's my opinion.
How do we get to what Joe's talking? Because that's, he's right about this. Dave, go ahead, sorry.
So I agree with Joe. I do think, even though it's about as clear as mud, that we should try to preserve our ability to special permit a larger structure as an ADU. Again, I'm not going to get into it, but anyone that's talked to them about this, I don't even think they know. So, but I think we should try to do it. If we can get it past the AG, then I think it will give us flexibility. I get really concerned about complexity in this. I think any perceived or any idea that we would maybe be restricting people's ability to get a second dwelling or regulating that in some way, I think we would have a really difficult time at town meeting with. So with that and complexity, I think that we could have issues at town meeting. So I think we really need to streamline this as much as possible and be very clear about what its intent is. As far as restricting from STRs, I think we had a discussion about this. I think I did with staff and some other people today, that I 100% support that. I'm not sure. I think we need to get the new ADU definitions and placed in our zoning first, and then come back at a next town meeting and restrict the STRs away. Again, I personally don't think, I mean, we saw an average of 10 tertiaries a year. I don't think ADUs are going to change that. They're still going to be expensive to build. So I don't think we're going to see a ton of them, but I do think that we do need to restrict the short-term rentals away. But I just don't think right now, while we're trying to pass these bylaws, that it's time. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave.
Stephen.
Agree. Steve, how you doing?
Hey, Nat, nice job in there this evening, especially North Water. Just throw some thoughts out there. I agree with what's been said, largely summarize the larger size ADU as a special permit. I think Dave's got an interesting point that carries a lot of weight, which is maybe phase 2 of the ADU discussion relates to short-term rental. That is after a definition and some other details have been established at town meeting. And I just throw out there that restrict, I think there could be some utility, and as opposed to an outright ban, there may be certain areas, certain zones and other considerations for limitations versus an outright ban. The other thing, I think this might be an opportunity, and I know it's probably more headaches, but I think it's worthwhile for Nantucket 50 years from now. And it has to do with number of bedrooms and parking. And for me, it's not so much how many dwellings, it's does it meet the ground coverage? Is it below it? Does it meet the setbacks? Does it go through a stringent HDC approval process for appropriate size and massing? And then you look at that as the architectural elements as they're presented on a site. And what comes up next? Parking. And for me, parking revolves back to number of bedrooms. So I wonder if we, at some point, are looking at this concept of, it's not the label. This goes to Dave's point about keeping it simple too, in a certain way. It's not so much about we labeled dwelling certain things. It's about how many bedrooms are allowed on a lot in a particular zone, because the number of bedrooms is going to limit the amount of parking. You typically have a bedroom, you'll have either one car or two. We used that, I think, fairly successfully with tertiary dwellings. When you got a tertiary dwelling on a lot, it limited the number of bedrooms. And that was often overlooked in discussion, but I think that that was an important control element. So parking came up to quite a bit of an extended discussion earlier today. It is a huge problem in our year-round neighborhoods. And with the ADUs, while we may not be able to control the number of bedrooms in an ADU, their size will be self-policing. And the number of bedrooms on a lot could go a long way in helping to cure parking problems. So just some thoughts. Thank you.
If I could follow up to that,
Yeah.
Stephen, that's a good suggestion that I hadn't thought of, that popped into my head based on your comments, that we can't regulate parking or bedroom capacity in connection with the ADUs, and we can't regulate, I don't believe, bedroom capacity with a second dwelling or a primary either, but that raises the issue of parking. So perhaps we should consider an article taking a look at the parking requirements for the second dwellings, which is very much under your purview, primary and secondary.
Yeah.
Well, because we actually can't require parking for the ADU if it's within half a mile of any kind of NERDA stop or a ferry.
Which is the entire island with an exception of portions of Quidnet and Woolwinnet.
Yeah, where the parking really doesn't matter.
I don't want to belabor this meeting.
No,
But
okay,
I
well,
could talk about
we
this for
have,
hours.
we really
If
do
I
have to
can-
I
get a
just don't
bunch of
wanna do
stuff
that
out.
right now.
I have some good direction. The only thing I don't
Okay.
really have clear consensus on is, can I just pull where everyone's at with the STR issue? Prohibit it or not prohibit it in the ADUs? When
I don't think we
draft the
can
article.
prohibit it at this
No.
point.
Okay.
No.
Because we have a
That's-
huge issue with the installed base of dwelling units.
Yeah.
I want to suggest one thing for the bylaw, Megan and Leslie. So if the scenario is that the lot already has the primary and secondary dwelling, and neither of them, no, that's actually not what I want to say right now. What I want to say right now is when someone, let's say you have a primary dwelling, it's already there. Somebody wants to build a secondary dwelling. They want it to be 1,200 square feet. Okay, so if we've decided that our size of our permitted use ADU is 1,200 square feet, they can just build it and we're fine with that. If we've decided that our gross area is 900 square feet and they want to build a 1,200 square feet ADU, they have to come to us for a special permit.
This
Which
would
they
be
have
the
to
This would
anyway.
be the
No,
sort
no.
of new tertiary.
No, this is just a second dwelling.
But a second dwelling.
It's just,
Okay,
they just
okay,
want to build
okay.
a second dwelling,
Okay.
okay? And they want it to be a few hundred square feet more than our permitted use ADU. That's what they want. I'm just saying theoretically, this is a hypothetical.
Assuming all this is adopted.
Yeah, but
I'm just saying that this
the
is going to
differential,
happen, and we have to
20%.
have a bylaw that responds to this situation. And what I would like to see in that bylaw is that I would like them, and this comes from what has already been approved and what the lawyer at the OHLC said we could do, that in the special permit finding, we have offered them the right to build the ADU, and they declined that right in preference for building the larger secondary. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Because then they do not have the right to have a protected ADU. They accepted that they waived that right. They waived that right and built the secondary dwelling. So could you figure out how to draft something like this if everybody agrees and talk to the AG about it? Because they can still come back to us and build a garage apartment if they want to. And if we keep a tertiary, they could still build that. But if it's a new development and they obviously have a primary dwelling, when they build the secondary dwelling, it's either going to be a permitted use ADU because it matches the size that we've defined. Or if it's larger, we want to draft our bylaw so that they come to us for a special permit and we make it clear that that they've waived their right. That's my question.
I'm going to marinate on that.
Because
I'm not going to give an answer right now.
Otherwise, they're
Again-
gonna have to come back and say, okay, we got the special permit for a larger secondary, and we want to have our ADU, and we want to have our garage apartment.
Okay, so I see what you're saying. So let me make sure I'm kind of digesting how you're interpreting this. So I'm saying in the districts that can't have tertiaries right now, right?
Right.
And they can have second dwellings by right. And because they can now have a second dwelling by right and an ADU by right, the proposal is to change the second dwelling to a special permit.
Right.
In a condition of that future special permit, should they pursue one, they would relinquish any rights as a condition of that.
They have
For
the
the
right
ADU.
to an ADU unless they waive it because they want to build a larger dwelling.
Okay,
Then it's their choice.
I
It's
see what
their
you're saying.
choice. And the garage apartment also has to be a special permit because it's yet another
Okay.
accessory
Yep.
dwelling.
Yep, well, in those districts where
What
you
is the
can't have the
differential
three now.
between the differential factor percentage for second and primary? Is it 20%?
20.
Okay, so
Of ground level.
I know, I'm just, that needs to stay. Like-
No, yeah, we don't have to change.
Yeah, but
No,
we're, yeah, but
we'll
we're
leave that.
talking
But the
about,
secondary is by special permit.
but, okay.
So I'll
I'm just
include
saying the
some
second
ideas
dwelling
in a
of-
modification to this, sorry to interrupt now.
No.
I just don't want to lose this train of thought. I'll include some ideas based on that feedback into the second dwelling definition, which has some other unrelated changes that we're going to be advancing as well.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Megan.
I'm just telling you, that second dwelling is like driving on the beach, so you know, the locals.
Stephen has his hand up.
No one is taking away the secondary dwelling. It's
But we keep
everyone
talking
will still
about
be
900 square feet in a second dwelling, and
No,
that's
no,
not,
that's if, that
if it's the ADU and there's nothing
they
else.
can it depends on if they have to come to us or not for a permit.
Okay,
They
all right.
don't have to come for a permit if they're just building it of a certain size. And we should probably look at how big these things tend to be, because that can guide what we set the protected ADU size at. And then they come, if they don't want to build something that's that small, then they come for a special permit. And we say, you had the right to build this, but you're waiving it, and you get this secondary
I
dwelling
think
by
we gotta
special
take what
permit.
Joe said and get staff to, you know, get his language, because he understands this stuff, like I understand restaurant stuff. It's like, this is getting like a whole new layer of confusion
No,
to
that's
understand
okay.
what's going on. And I think it's important that what Joe was talking about earlier is we get this figured out, exactly what we want to be special permit versus by right. That whole thing about gross floor area versus square footage versus ground cover, like that's good stuff. We would be doing that already if we didn't have this, by the way, especially with modulars being used for, you know,
It's, like I said, this is just
tertiaries.
about responding to what they're making. This is like make work.
I know it is. That's exactly, this is
It is, it
extra.
really is make work. And,
But it's-
and we
but-
just have to make sure that we don't end up making work for ourselves and destroying what we have that we like.
Well, I agree, but but we have to make it easy for the public to understand what we're doing.
Yep, so one
That's what
last
I'm worried
thought
about.
that I just want to make sure we're all, you all have consensus about this. I'm gonna, even though the ADU bylaw package may not be in final form, pre-approved by the Attorney General for your second draft review by the January 5th meeting, I'd still like to advertise the tertiary dwelling zoning bylaw amendment, that we're going away with that, so that way it goes into effect. And there's no period of time that's gonna lapse between the temporary moratorium and while we sort through the public hearing process.
So we
for
are
this.
eliminating the tertiary now.
Yes,
As
and
far as a
I'd like to-
freestanding third dwelling.
I'd like to advertise that for the January 5th meeting, and I think you should continue the
We're
discussion.
we're replacing
So
it
whenever
now.
this ADU.
We're replacing it with the ADU.
Yes.
Right,
But-
except that
but-
there's,
Okay,
we
I'm sorry.
can't put any restrictions on the ADU. So do we want to be responsive in some other way? the ADU law says we cannot restrict the ADU to year-round occupancy. And I hope everybody understands that. right?
Because the state doesn't think about those
We-
things.
we
They just
cannot.
think about a dwelling.
It says year-round occupancy restriction on our list, but we cannot, right?
So
Okay, what?
here is where EOHLC has given us certain guidance where the Attorney General has disagreed with that guidance. So it's not so clear. I need to double check with Town Council, but there was a recent decision, was it Sandwich that Amy sent us? I forget the town. I'll have to look into that, but it did go through with a town on the Cape with a year-round occupancy restriction
Okay,
on the
well, let's
ADU.
have a look at that.
And that's really important because EOHLC has been adamant that there is to be no
Right.
restriction on these ADUs.
Well,
So
what I was going to suggest in that, to get at that, is since we do allow 3 dwellings on lots, because you can always have a primary, a secondary, and a garage apartment in every single zone.
No, you can't.
you can't-
You can't.
Where, in most zones?
no, so the second dwelling, like that is, the garage apartment, if you choose to pursue that, counts as the second or tertiary dwelling. It's not
Right.
an extra thing that you get to have.
It's
I-
either or.
I thought we saw these all the time, where we approve a secondary dwelling, a primary dwelling, and a garage apartment.
You do.
The
but-
garage apartment's a tertiary dwelling, though. You can't have
It's
more than 3
tertiary.
dwellings.
Okay, well, where I was going with this was that we cannot restrict the ADU, and we cannot condition the ADU on restricting the primary dwelling. That's what we think, anyway, notwithstanding what you just said about this exception. But if there is a 3rd dwelling, we could we say, could we have a general condition in our bylaw that if there are 3 dwellings on one lot, one of them will have a restriction? Like, basically, we're not conditioning the ADU on restricting the primary, but we are conditioning the ADU on restricting the 3rd one. Do you see what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I do. I think we'll have to look into that.
And it would just be sort of a general bylaw. The problem is that if we make our permitted, we're going to run into problems with the really large secondaries.
I think, just one quick point, I don't want to belabor this, but if and when, because I think it's important we do it, that we restrict these to no short-term rentals, I think by default, they will service, maybe not year-round, but they'll service as, they'll have to serve as housing in one way or another, whether it's a short-term employee housing or a long-term year-round housing. So I think that to get caught up in preserving that restriction on something we build 10 of a year, when maybe just restricting away the short-term rentals will accomplish that.
I agree with Dave.
Well, then what happens to all of the people who already have full build outs and didn't expect to have restrictions on short-term renting their property?
Well, I mean, that gets complex, right? They full build out and they accepted a year-round restriction, which I know we can't enforce anymore, but if, you know, it's a trade-off. I think it's a longer discussion, but I think it's something we should definitely talk about.
But
As
I also
far
going to that point is like, you know, people bought in town and thought they had 50% ground cover. And we said we should go to 40 because it's better. So I think there's trade-offs that you eventually, there are certain guardrails or tweaking of the gauge, so to speak, that we need to do. And I think that's really important. If we see something that's not working well, I think we need to turn it down and turn it up, whatever way it is, to be more restrictive if we have to. And I think that's really important, that we have to have that level of being able to go up or down. I think that's really important for us to manage and move on as the Nantucket needs happens.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just add,
Go
we're
ahead.
talking about like a lot of concepts here. We already have like a really complex bylaw that we're trying to work this all into. And we may not be able to do everything that we're talking about at this upcoming town meeting. And I think a lot of it may be a wait and see approach to some things because of the conflicting advice that we're getting from EOHLC saying one thing and the Attorney General saying another. So, I don't know what pieces of it we may or may not want to advance, but I'm just cautioning you that we're talking about a lot of things and they may not be realistic for this upcoming town meeting.
Especially the rental stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that's off
I
the
just don't.
table. Yeah.
You know what's sad about all this? We're trying to protect the public from what the state is doing. And it looks like we're trying to make more houses. I don't know what else to say anymore after tonight. I feel like everything I've been through for 20 years just happened tonight. It's unbelievable. All I'm thinking about is Sylvia's parking space in that parking garage. Remember that?
How could I forget?
Now you got Stephen Wolf.
I have a process question. What are we going to do to figure out the right size for this protected use ADU?
We gotta talk to the modular people.
No, well,
That's important.
but I think we have to, yes, but we have to consider what is already built on the ground, don't we? I mean, do we have a way of generating? No, Leslie is shaking her head. I want to know, how big are most of the secondary dwellings? And how many garage apartments / tertiaries are there?
So I've talked with the assessor in recent years about mining their data for different things.
Leslie, turn on your mic.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
So I've talked with the assessor over the course of several years about how we can mine their vision data for different types of information. And their data is based on parcel information. It's not based on individual structure information. So while you can see details about individual structures, you can't really search for that. It searches like by the parcel. So,
But
so
can you
that's not-
report out that field? I mean, that is a field in their database.
Stephen, get it.
But, well, I mean, they don't define it the way we define it. They don't have, we can look into it. I'm just saying, I don't think that's going to work. And we don't keep those types of records at Plus, other than paper copies. It's not in our electronic files. There's definitely not anything historic. We keep structure counts, but not structure details.
So the reason why I think it's important if we can get it, and I think it's the sort of data we should be able to get. I'm not saying we can, I'm just saying it's not esoteric data, is because we're gonna have to settle on a size, and we want it to overlap with what's already built so that people don't have to, either go get a special permit or find that they have a right to an additional dwelling. Because if there are a lot of lots that have a primary dwelling and a secondary dwelling that's 2,000 square feet, and we say that the protected use ADU has to be 1,000 square feet, they will get another dwelling. We cannot stop that. They will get a protected use ADU. And if we make it too big,
But that just makes it
then
3, though.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what we are now.
Well, then we have to make it not then we have to be extra sure that we don't make it possible for them to have, this additional one. It would be better if we sized it correctly so that a lot of the installed base of secondary dwellings is recognized as a protected use ADU. Do you agree, or?
I think that maybe complicates it. I think to the extent that we can do an even swap for the tertiary. I know it doesn't have, maybe it will, maybe it won't. Let's just assume it won't based on EOHLC's advice that it won't have an occupancy restriction. The size parameters are similar. If we can go with a special permit to increase that is consistent. In the past 13 years or so since tertiaries have been in existence, the planning board has issued roughly 100 approvals.
And that includes garage apartments.
Yeah, that are the third dwelling on the property. So averaging 10-ish a year, you know, and I asked an admin person in our office to start this research project, and unfortunately he moved on to other things. But what I wanted to know was, of those 100, how many are maxed out in ground cover? Because then they can't get an ADU on top of it
That,
anyway.
okay,
Right, and that's only the 100
that's a big part
properties.
of this. We haven't even talked about that yet.
Yeah.
What, if ground cover still matters in
It
Nantucket,
does,
right?
yes.
Okay, they're not telling us we
No,
can't
no,
do
it's
that.
that we can have
Okay.
setbacks and we can have the ground, all of that will be, I think that we
All right, so
actually
then,
have
I
an
mean, that's-
easier time with that than other
That
towns.
fits into the
'cause-
whole thing of like, there's only so much ground cover on these lots. And that, you know, if they're not gonna be restricted, like, be a covenant, then that's all they got. If we can fix that someday, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, 48 Section 3 is interpreted by the local building official, usually the building commissioner, and, you know, he or she reviews whatever's proposed for reasonable regulations. So they could determine that it's, you know, reasonable to exceed the ground cover.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't
So
know
I
that.
just want everyone to know that it is an option. I
Wow,
mean,
that sounds, I didn't know anything
Can
about
you
that.
repeat that?
Okay.
What? You mean
So-
they could say the ADU can exceed the ground cover because it makes sense for whatever
Right.
reason?
And I'm not saying that's what will happen. I just want you to know that that's an option, or it could be, you know, the ADU will cause the ground cover to go over by 10 square feet, and the official makes the determination,
Oh.
10 square feet's still
Yeah.
reasonable, but 500 square feet's not reasonable. I mean, it's
All
open
right,
to interpretation, and I just
I'm
want to
thinking
make sure that
new
people
build
understand that.
stuff that's already calculated. I'm not thinking, you know what I mean? Like, okay. Hi, Campbell.
Hi. So just because you were starting to talk statistics around the 10 and 13 years for the tertiary, right? What was it, 4 years ago that we changed it to 900 square
Yeah.
feet from 650? So there are going to be tertiaries that are going to have the capacity to expand to the 900.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was started with the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up
Yeah.
because sometimes we think where we are is where we've always been, kind of thing. Okay, thanks.
All right, are we, I think we're
Steve Steve has his
saturated.
hand up.
Steve, oh, Steve,
Quite some
sorry,
time.
Steve. Oh, my God.
Hey, no worries. Interesting discussion. So look, the secondary dwelling is the third rail. We all know that. And
Yep.
from my point of view, we're looking at a conversion of the concept of a tertiary to an ADU. Tertiary could be freestanding, it could be a garage apartment, so on and so forth. We've kind of covered that. I don't want to let go of that concept. We did implement tertiary, a cap on the number of bedrooms. And I think that there has to be a way that we can, not this time around. Leslie pointed it out, I think, most accurately. We want to keep it simple. There's a lot of potential avenues here, but not for necessarily this town meeting, or maybe even the next one. But the number of bedrooms is going to help regulate parking. I just firmly believe that, being in a year-round neighborhood and seeing what the number of bedrooms do. Everyone is trying to convert, space into a bedroom. A bedroom means more people, means more cars, means more issues. At the same time, I strongly believe we should not be, taking people's property rights away. And I think that along the lines of this, well, I want to back up a second. There were two conceptual matters that were brought up, and I would like to get some understanding from council on this. One is, can we as a planning board have someone waive their right to an ADU under, I think the circumstances were you were awarded a secondary dwelling of some nature. So the question is, can a town bylaw, can a municipality allow someone to waive their right and have it stand up in court to an ADU under any circumstance? And then the other side of that was, let me see my notes here, like chicken scratch. A special permit, can a special permit that awards a larger size be used to introduce restrictions on an ADU. And I think that those are two concepts that have been brought up that I think are going to be instrumental if we know the answer, because it's going to tell us if we're going down a rabbit hole or we're going down a viable path. So I can try and come up with a way to say those more succinctly. Again, just going off my scribbled notes here, but it seems as though waiving the right to an ADU under any circumstances and whether a special permit can be used by awarding more leniency on an ADU than the state has provided, for instance, the 50% cap or 900 square foot cap, can restrictions then be put on the ADU above and beyond what the law allows?
I can already
ahead.
answer that. So EOHLC's guidance to the question of waiving the right, they've said yes if, it's in connection with the special permit for the larger dwelling. As to the question of more restrictions on the ADU through the special permit, the answer is no. You cannot place more restrictions on to the ADU than what otherwise would be permitted.
Thanks, Meg. That's helpful. I think we just want to keep that in mind. Thanks, Nat.
Okay,
Oh, acting chair.
thank you. So can we end this dentist appointment now?
Yes, we can, but I can't make that motion.
I know, but I'm not asking, I'm just saying, are we?
No, I think
kind
this
of-
is good. I have a lot of
This
feedback
is-
that I'll
this
be
is,
incorporating, and I'm
um,
sure it's not going to be the first bite.
As far as the
apple here,
January
so.
5th thing, I don't know what to say about that,
I
but we gotta
just-
try to.
I just want to make
Something.
sure I'm not in a position of accepting that we are swapping the ADU with the tertiary, because
Trying
that
to
was
do the
said
best
a
we
couple
can.
times, and I think there, that's building on conversations that I haven't been party to, but I think having a tertiary it's the only dwelling that we have that we can restrict to owner occupancy, or
I know what you're
year-round
gonna go on.
occupancy.
Yeah.
And so to the extent that some secondaries can be considered permitted use ADUs, and I'm not proposing making them restricted to STRs, okay? We're not doing that. We're not restricting the ADU from being allowed for STRs. So to the extent that we can make some secondaries the permitted use ADU, we preserve the right to grant a special permit for a tertiary and restrict it. And that's for the benefit of the community. And we are protecting the secondary because we are not taking it away. And someone, if it's a new build, they can have an ADU, which is 1,000 square feet, or they can come to us for a special permit and say, we are opting to have a bigger a bigger accessory dwelling unit, and that is our permitted use ADU. And then they can also have a tertiary in our zoning code with restrictions. And if we say, oh no, we can't have the permitted use ADU be the secondary, we are giving up the right to restrict the tertiary. And I don't support that, and I don't know why anybody would.
I think the answer to all of that stuff you just said is to enhance the covenant program
Well,
and fix it. Because that's what we're trying to do.
that's not,
And if we-
that's not gonna make people happy.
Well,
That's
we
the
also
right
need to
thing.
remember we need to come up with something that the community understands and supports. Just because, myself or yourself, Hillary, support something strongly, that's not going to help us at town meeting if it fails. So I think we just, and I'm not poo-pooing your idea. I'm just saying that we really need to be conscious about keeping this simple and keeping it something that everyone can read and grasp.
Yep.
And with that, I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Dave?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye. Thank you, staff.
John?
Thanks.
Is John still there?
Sorry, John signed off at 7:36.
Sorry. Okay. Hillary?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you, everyone.
Where do I get a hat like that, Joe?
Emily?
Be a good boy, kid.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Too late for that.
Good night.
Right.